Martial Peak, Chapter 4952. This junior can advance to the 8th order. No matter who was faced with such a situation, it would be difficult for them to remain calm. Therefore, Zhong Liang was quite impressed by Yang Kai's reaction. It was true that Yang Kai did not feel any resentment. He could understand that Tian Xiaozhu's actions were not aimed at him. Rather, Tian Xiaozhu's actions and words came from a place of righteousness. In order to protect the secret of the Void Corridor, Ming Qi was willing to sacrifice his own life. In comparison, how could Yang Kai not endure such insignificant grievance? Yang Kai, this is for the greater good of the human race. Tian Xiaozhu earnestly persuaded. Seeing that Yang Kai remained silent, he thought that the former was unwilling to compromise. Ultimately, though, the willingness of the other party did not matter. This was how such matters had been handled since ancient times. It was a given that those who stepped foot into the black ink battlefield had to put their individual lives aside. Therefore, he believed that Yang Kai would eventually come around. Yang Kai shook his head. "Senior, you have misunderstood. This junior is not an unreasonable person. You have made yourself very clear, so how can this junior not understand?" Tian Xiaozhu nodded in relief. "It's good that you understand." But Yang Kai changed the subject. "From what you mentioned earlier, Senior, this junior will not need to offer up the World Spring if I can advance to the 8th Order Open Heaven realm in the future, correct?" For him, offering up the World Spring would definitely cause some damage to his small universe. Although a profounding spirit fruit could repair his small universe, he would no longer be able to ignore the corrosion of black ink strength. That would be extremely dangerous on the black ink battlefield. It was not that he was unwilling to sacrifice himself for the human race. Had the cave heavens and paradises not made far more sacrifices for the human race throughout the ages? They had silently waged war against the Black Ink clan on the Black Ink battlefield for countless eons and invested unimaginable amounts of manpower and resources into the effort. It could be said that the stability of the 3,000 worlds was inseparable from the contributions of the cave heavens and paradises. In the safe and stable environment behind them were Yang Kai's subordinates and disciples in Voidland, as well as his friends and relatives in the Star Boundary. If he were an ordinary Open Heaven Realm master, he would not have hesitated to give up the World Spring. However, Yang Kai was confident in himself. He had always been able to crush opponents in the same realm as himself. In other words, if he could advance into the 8th Order Open Heaven Realm in the future, the role he could play and the strength he could exert would definitely be greater than any of the ancestors in front of him right now. Tian Xiaozhu was stunned for a moment, but he nodded anyway. "That's how it is. If you can advance into the 8th Order Open Heaven Realm, then there is no need for you to give up the World Spring. The Inner Sanctum will also spare no effort to help you advance to the 8th Order as soon as possible so that you can contribute to the human race." Yang Kai cupped his fist. This junior can advance to the 8th Order. Everybody else was startled by his words, and somebody scowled and pointed out, "Brat, didn't you say that your initial breakthrough was to the 5th Order? How can you advance to the 8th Order? Don't tell me you have an innate open heaven pill from the universe furnace on hand." Innate open heaven pills produced by the universe furnace were natural products of the world that contained the mysteries of the universe. They could help a person break through the shackles of their limits and ignore the bottleneck of the open heaven realm. As long as they had enough of such spirit pills, they could even advance into the 9th Order Open Heaven realm, regardless of their starting point. Unfortunately, one could only encounter such treasures serendipitously. The universe furnace was one of the most profound and mysterious treasures in existence. Not only was it extremely elusive, but its occasional appearance in the world was also very short-lived. Therefore, it was no easy task to obtain innate open heaven pills. What's more, even if such treasures were on hand, Yang Kai would not have the chance to consume them. They would be given to an 8th Order Open Heaven Realm master instead so that he could advance into the 9th Order Open Heaven Realm. It would always be highly beneficial for the human race to gain an additional 9th Order master. Yang Kai calmly explained, "It is true that this junior only broke through to the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm initially. However, this junior was later fortunate enough to consume a mid-rank world fruit and advance into the 6th Order Open Heaven Realm." A mid-rank world fruit? Somebody exclaimed in surprise while the others looked on in shock. As Eighth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters, how could they not know about the existence of the World Fruit? That was an even rarer treasure than an innate Open Heaven pill. Somebody said, "It is rumored that there is a world tree that grows in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary." The Grand Ancient Ruins boundary is extremely difficult for ordinary people to enter. Could that be where you obtained your world fruit? Yang Kai nodded affirmatively. I accidentally became involved with the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary and spent some time inside that place. It was also inside the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary that I obtained the world fruit. A series of gasps rang out throughout the conference hall. That was an incredible opportunity indeed. A mid-rank world fruit could not only increase one's cultivation by an entire order, but it also increased the limit that they could achieve in the future. Lewin probed further. Does that mean that even though you were only in the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm when you first advanced into the Open Heaven Realm, you actually have the opportunity to advance to the 8th Order in the future? The 4 Universe Pillars had a huge appeal to Open Heaven Realm Masters, especially 8th Order Masters like themselves. Possessing one of the 4 Universe Pillars would allow them to fight with greater efficiency on the battlefield. Lewin was truly reluctant to snatch the belongings of a junior, but in light of the bigger picture, Yang Kai was powerless to protect the world spring. Leaving this matter alone would only result in a huge loss for the human race. That was why he had remained silent all this while. He had silently considered this matter in his heart. If Yang Kai was made to offer up the world spring, he would definitely have to compensate Yang Kai for the gesture. At the very least, he had to protect Yang Kai as much as possible within the scope of his ability. Nevertheless, he did not expect to learn that Yang Kai had consumed a mid-rank world fruit before. Yes. Yang Kai nodded firmly. That is why this junior has the confidence to advance to the 8th Order Open Heaven Realm. Lewin nodded lightly. You should put in more effort in the future then. If you need anything, please let this old master know. Since Yang Kai could be considered part of Yin-Yang Cave Heaven, it was only natural that Lewin would pay more attention to him when they resided at the same Great Pass. Although there was no strong sense of factionalism in the Great Passes, it stood to reason that most people would be closer to others of the same sect. Many thanks, Elder. Yang Kai bowed. On the other side, Tian Xiaoju fell silent for a moment before he said, if that's the case, then the matter regarding the world spring is settled. However, this old master would like to say something. Yang Kai looked at Tian Xiaoju. Please enlighten me, Elder. The Black Ink battlefield is extremely dangerous. You need to be very careful. If anything were to happen to you, it would be a huge loss to the human race. This junior will bear that in mind. Yang Kai bowed. Zhong Liang, however, just snickered at those words. Brother Tian, if you knew what this brat did in the past, you would not bother to warn him about such things. Tian Xiaozhu asked curiously, what did he do? Zhong Liang glanced at Yang Kai. This brat is the boldest one I've ever seen. He disguised himself as a Black Ink disciple and spent several years in the Black Ink clan's territory. It was all thanks to this brat that Feng Ying and the others managed to come back safely. Everybody in the conference hall immediately became speechless, too dumbfounded to say anything. The corners of Lu An's face twitched, and he was filled with lingering fear. You disguised yourself as a Black Ink disciple and spent several years among the Black Ink clan? That's not bold. That's reckless. Tian Xiaozhu's mouth quivered in anger. What if your identity was discovered and something happened to you? He had tried his best to protect the world spring. Not only did he not hesitate to use his authority to coerce the other party, but he even demanded that Yang Kai offer up the world spring without any regard for his pride. Who could have known that Yang Kai had done such a terrifying thing? Yang Kai smiled bitterly. I had no choice. He had not wanted to do something so risky either. Unfortunately, the place connected to the Void Corridor was located inside a sealed world in the Black Ink clan's domain. Having found himself in the Black Ink clan hinterland as soon as he arrived, what else could he have done? Lewin scolded, don't be so reckless again in the future. Yang Kai nodded repeatedly, yes. Many of the 8th Order Masters in the hall were staring at Yang Kai with strange expressions now. Nobody had ever done such a thing throughout all of history. If it was said that they had only paid attention to him earlier because of the world spring, then they were now paying attention to him because of his conduct. Somebody suddenly turned to look at Zhong Liang. Brother Zhong, you mentioned that Feng Ying and that group of people only returned thanks to Yang Kai. What did you mean? Zhong Liang did not bother to explain. Instead, he turned to look at Yang Kai and instructed, show them. Seeing was always better than listening in terms of clarity. That was why he had gone out of his way to capture a black ink disciple. It was so that Yang Kai could easily demonstrate his ability. Outside the palace where the old ancestor was in retreat, Yang Kai had used the black ink strength suppressed inside his small universe to demonstrate the effects of the purifying light. It was just that Zhong Liang was reluctant to reveal the fact that Yang Kai possessed a world spring, so he had gone to the trouble of preparing in advance. Who could have known that Tian Xiaozhu had already inferred the truth? He couldn't keep the secret hidden at all. If he had known earlier, Zhong Liang could have saved himself the trouble of capturing a black ink disciple. Yang Kai responded affirmatively and strode towards the captured black ink disciple. The Eighth Order masters watched curiously, wondering what Zhong Liang was selling in his bottle gourd. A seal had been placed on the black ink disciple, so he could not circulate any strength, and he had not dared to act rashly after being thrown here by Zhong Liang. Of course, he had been observing his surroundings vigilantly in hopes of finding an opportunity to escape, so when he saw Yang Kai walking towards him at this moment, he stepped back defensively. But where could he go in his condition? Furthermore, it only took Zhong Liang a casual wave of his hand to completely lock the black ink disciple in place. A yellow and blue light suddenly appeared in Yang Kai's hands, which immediately attracted everybody's attention to him. Zhong Liang also paid close attention. Even though he had witnessed this sight before, he could not tear his eyes away at this moment. A distinct yin and yang element power radiated from the blue and yellow lights respectively. Then, in front of everybody's eyes, Yang Kai clapped his hands together. A pure white light bloomed into existence when the yellow and blue lights merged together. The white light immediately cascaded down on the black ink disciple. In the next moment, the black ink disciple revealed a look of pain on his face. A thick layer of black ink strength simultaneously seeped out from his body, accompanied by a series of sizzling sounds. To the onlookers' astonishment, the black ink strength was then purified by the white light and vanished into nothingness. The Eighth Order ancestors who were watching closely widened their eyes instantly at the sight. There was a loud clatter as most of them knocked over their chairs and involuntarily jumped to their feet in astonishment. Their expressions were filled with shock, and their widened eyes overflowed with disbelief. Even though they were worldly masters, they had never seen such an incredulous situation before. The black ink disciple's pain only lasted for a moment, and his expression soon calmed down. Under the shroud of the white light, both his figure and his expression appeared hazy. Yang Kai withdrew his hand and nodded lightly at Zhong Liang. Only then did Zhong Liang dispel his power around black ink disciple and take a step back. The entire hall was deathly silent. Everybody was staring at the black ink disciple in stunned silence, and it was only a long while later that the sound of people nervously gulping echoed throughout the room. Somebody finally asked, Brother Zhong, what is this? He had a guess in his heart, but he could not be certain. That was because what he saw with his eyes might not be what he was thinking in his heart. There were many people with similar thoughts. All of them turned to look at Zhong Liang with an inquiring gaze, hoping to gain a more definite answer from him. Zhong Liang smiled slightly. Don't tell me you don't understand what just happened. Tian Xiaozhu's expression was grim and cold. Brother Zhong, this is an important matter. Now is not the time for jokes. Could it really be the same as what we are thinking? Martial Peak, Chapter 4953, Unable to be spread to the public? Zhong Liang nodded seriously. What you are thinking is exactly how things are. And that's also the reason why I summoned you all here. Impossible. Tian Xiaozhu faintly lost his composure. Black ink strength is extremely corrosive. Once a person's small universe is corroded by it, they will lose themselves completely. It is not as though we have not tried various methods to reverse this phenomenon throughout the ages. Even the old ancestors have been trying to find a solution, but they have never succeeded. How is this possible? It was not that he did not want to believe the truth. He was simply afraid that having great hope would only lead to greater disappointment. Seeing is believing, Zhongliang quickly said. He was feeling a little more comfortable with himself at the moment. When he first learned about this matter, he had also been filled with a sense of incredulity. In fact, he was so shocked that he lost the composure of an eighth-order ancestor. Therefore, he secretly felt cheerful to see the others reacting much more dramatically than him. It was not that he was trying to mock them, he was simply in a good mood. Turning to look at the black ink disciple he captured previously, he asked, "How do you feel?" After the black ink strength had been dispelled, the black ink disciple remained standing frozen on the spot with a deep frown on his face. He seemed to be confused by the situation. However, he had not forgotten everything he did when he was a black ink disciple. Looking back now, he could not understand how he had become so fanatical or how he could willingly follow behind the Black Ink clan to attack his fellow comrades. Even though he understood that his actions were caused by the corrosion of the Black Ink strength, he was filled with guilt at this moment. Upon hearing Zhongliang's question, he looked up with a strange expression. It seemed as though he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Answering Senior's question, this junior feels as though he has just woken up from a long nightmare. Zhongliang nodded. Now that you have awoken, you should be more careful in the future. Yes. Open your small universe. We would like to investigate, Zhongliang instructed. The former Black Ink disciple nodded and opened the portal to his small universe with great enthusiasm. In the next moment, the Eighth Order ancestors who had been waiting for what seemed like forever quickly poured their divine senses into the small universe to investigate. The Eighth Order masters probed very carefully without missing any nook or cranny. Only after a thorough sweep did they slowly withdraw their divine senses. Most of them had looks of disbelief on their faces, but even more of them were delighted beyond words. Throughout the ages, the human race had fought against the Black Ink clan. Although they had always guarded the various great passes and prevented the Black Ink clan from invading the 3,000 worlds, the price they paid was the continuous investment of generation after generation who would eventually meet their deaths. On the other hand, the Black Ink clan endlessly sprung up like bamboo shoots after the rain. As soon as one was cut down, another would immediately sprout up again. They would never be wiped out for good. The human masters who passed through the no-return pass would forever lose their chance to return home. That was because nobody could guarantee that they had not been corroded by Black Ink strength on the Black Ink battlefield. If they accidentally allowed a Black Ink disciple to return, it would be a disaster for the 3,000 worlds. The key was in the Black Ink strength. This was an extremely strange and intractable power. Even a Ninth Order old ancestor could not dispel Black Ink strength that had invaded a Black Ink disciple's body. Hence, their only option was to slaughter the Black Ink disciples to prevent future troubles. However, they had just witnessed a method that could easily purify and dispel Black Ink strength inside the body of a Black Ink disciple. Not only could this secret technique restore order to chaos, but it also allowed the Black Ink disciple to break free from the corrosion of Black Ink strength and recover their true nature. How could they not be excited and elated? All of them could understand the preciousness of this secret technique. This was definitely something that could rewrite the endless years of conflict between the human race and the Black Ink clan. Taking a deep breath, one of them turned to look at Luan and asked, "Brother Lu, since when did Enyang Cave Heaven become capable of such a feat? Why have we never heard you mention anything before?" Yang Kai could be considered part of Enyang Cave Heaven. Even if he was not born in Enyang Cave Heaven, he was a son-in-law. Therefore, it was not strange for the speaker to associate them together. What's more, when Yang Kai cast the secret technique just now, he had clearly used Yin and Yang element powers. The two powers had converged into one when he pressed both his left and right palms together. There were some similarities with how certain Enyang Cave Heaven secret techniques operated. Luan shook his head with a serious expression. "I don't know anything either." He could not be certain whether this was a secret technique from Inyang Cave Heaven. After all, he had been stationed on the black ink battlefield for thousands of years. It would not be strange for him to know nothing if this was a new secret technique that was recently developed by his juniors. After listening to the conversation between these two, Yang Kai cupped his fist, reporting to seniors, this secret technique did not originate from Inyang Cave Heaven. Tian Xiaozhu chuckled, regardless of where the secret technique comes from. An ability that can dispel and purify black ink strength is a good ability. If this secret technique can be spread to the public, we humans will never need to fear the black ink clan again. Somebody else immediately nodded in agreement. That's right. We have been troubled by the black ink clan for so many years. If everyone can master this secret technique, then we will no longer need to fear the corrosion of black ink strength. Nobody else will ever be converted into a black ink disciple again. We can even charge straight into the black ink clan's territory and purge all the black ink clan once and for all. His face flushed red as he spoke. It was as if he could see the glorious scene in front of him, and his heart was filled with excitement. Everybody else was also influenced by the beautiful dream he described, and many of them looked extremely excited. At the same time, they finally understood why Zhong Liang had sent an urgent message to summon them despite knowing that the Black Ink clan army was still attacking. The significance behind this secret technique was too great, and the news had to be announced to the public as soon as possible. Although some people were originally dissatisfied with Zhong Liang's impatience, their dissatisfaction had all but vanished at this moment. This was an important matter that could benefit the entire human race after all. Seeing the heated discussion, Yang Kai sighed inwardly as he had no choice but to disappoint them. Seniors, this secret technique cannot be taught to the public. Nobody else can cultivate this secret technique either. Only this junior can use it. The discussion in the conference hall stopped abruptly as countless pairs of eyes turned to look at Yang Kai. Even Zhong Liang stared at Yang Kai in astonishment. He had known that Yang Kai had the means to cast the purifying light, but he did not know much else. There had been no time for him to ask either. Hence, he made some assumptions since purifying light was a secret technique. Even if it was impossible for everybody to cultivate it, there were thousands of talented individuals in Blue Sky Pass, so there were bound to be some who would succeed. He never imagined that he would hear such words from Yang Kai. Why can't others cultivate this secret technique? Luan asked in confusion. He had the same thoughts as Zhongliang. Since it was a secret technique, there would definitely be a method to cultivate it. As long as this method could be spread to the public, there was bound to be somebody who could successfully cultivate the secret technique. Yang Kai explained, this secret technique was not obtained through this junior's own cultivation, but was rather granted to me by senior experts. There is no cultivation method, so naturally, it cannot be taught to others. Having said that, he lifted his hands and activated the two marks. The marks that resembled the sun and moon instantly appeared before the eyes of the Eighth Order ancestors. Yang Kai then continued, these two marks are the foundation to cast purifying light, and they were given to me directly by the sun's burning light and moon's serene glimmer respectively. The yin and yang element power that this junior used to condense the purifying light before also comes from the source of those two seniors' power. The burning light and serene glimmer. Somebody gasped in awe. Meanwhile, most of the others looked solemn instead. These two famous existences were so well known that it was difficult not to have heard of them. It was rumored that they were ancient masters born alongside the world itself. Moreover, they represented destruction and annihilation. The chaotic, dead territory where they resided was filled with dead silence. Nobody could enter that place and survive for long, much less meet these two supreme beings. For Yang Kai to claim that the two marks were given to him by the burning light and serene glimmer, they could hardly believe their ears, but on second thought, it was possible that the powers of such beings were the only thing in the universe that could restrain the black ink strength. Luan frowned. You've met the burning light and serene glimmer? Yang Kai nodded. I spent some time with them in the past, and we can be considered friends. The Eighth Order ancestors felt their faces twitching hard when they heard those words. On the other hand, Zhong Liang widened his eyes and stared at Yang Kai like he was looking at a ghost. If Yang Kai had claimed that he was fortunate enough to meet the burning light and serene glimmer, then they would have reluctantly accepted his explanation. After all, neither the marks on his hands nor the purifying light could be faked. However, Yang Kai claimed that he had spent some time with them and could even be considered friends. He was friends with those two existences? Those are words not even the Ninth Order Open Heaven Realm old ancestors would dare to say. It is quite easy to get along with Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan, but they have some unique hobbies. Yang Kai casually explained. Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan? Zhong Liang was puzzled. Oh, that's how the burning light and serene glimmer requested I call them. Upon hearing those words, Zhong Liang felt his brow twitching as though he was playing the drums. What kind of relationship do they have? Why is he calling them Big Brother and Big Sister? Luan coughed lightly and asked cautiously, what unique hobbies do they have? Yang Kai looked ashamed. It's hard to look back on the past, let alone mention it. He could not speak the truth out loud. He could not bring himself to tell them that he had played house with those two for a long time in the chaotic, dead territory. Every time he thought about that time, he couldn't help feeling ashamed deep inside. Changing the topic of conversation, Yang Kai added, but it is precisely for this reason that this junior was blessed with these two marks by them. It is only with their strength as the source that I can unleash purifying light. Therefore, it is not that this junior is unwilling to teach this secret technique. It is simply that I cannot teach it. For the same reason, no one else can cultivate this secret technique. After listening to his explanation, everybody finally understood. This was certainly a secret technique that could not be spread to the public. They had been imagining a better future just moments ago, but they were forced to give up that hope at this moment. The value of a secret technique that could be taught to the masses and a secret technique that could not be taught to the masses was not equal. It could be said that the significance of purifying light had been greatly reduced. For that reason, all the people who had high expectations earlier were extremely disappointed. After a short silence, Zhong Liang finally opened his mouth. Although it is impossible to spread this secret technique to the public, Yang Kai is able to perform this secret technique. That in itself is already very helpful in the war between the human race and the Black Ink clan. Now that you have gathered here and witnessed the power of purifying light, please announce this good news when you return. Tell the disciples that they no longer have to hold back when fighting the Black Ink clan. They can fight without any inhibitions. Even if they accidentally become corroded by Black Ink strength, they no longer need to sacrifice parts of their small universe as before. They only need to return to the inner sanctum as soon as possible. I will designate an area where Yang Kai can help them to purify Black Ink strength that has seeped into their bodies. Also, as long as your lives are not at risk, please try to capture the Black Ink disciples alive when you are on the battlefield. There's no longer a need to kill them outright. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4954, Find someone named Yang Kai. On the Black Ink battlefield, the human race had always upheld an unchanging stance towards Black Ink disciples. Kill without mercy. It was not that they were being ruthless. Rather, there was simply no other solution. The Black Ink disciples corrupted by Black Ink strength would always hold the Black Ink clan supreme over all else in their hearts. In other words, they stood against the human race as mortal enemies. If the human race did not kill the Black Ink disciples, then the Black Ink disciple would kill them instead. Over the years, countless people had been corrupted by Black Ink strength and converted into Black Ink disciples by the Black Ink clan. On a similar note, the number of Black Ink disciples who died at the hands of their original allies was too high to count. Which one of these Black Ink disciples did not come from one of the major cave heavens or paradises? Which one of them was not one of the elite disciples of these forces? This was the cruel reality faced by the human race. Even so, they were powerless in this situation. All they could do was prevent themselves from being corrupted by Black Ink strength as much as possible. And the price they had to pay for their safety was to voluntarily sacrifice parts of their small universe. Unfortunately, their sacrifice would cause their cultivation to decline, their order to fall, and their martial Tao to be cut off forever. At least 20% of the cultivators at each of the various great passes had an incomplete small universe, regardless of their order in the open heaven realm. Their damaged small universe was the best evidence of the deadly struggle against the Black Ink clan. There were many Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters in the various Great Passes. Where did these Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters come from? All of them were originally cultivators in the Sixth Order whose strength had declined by an order. Throughout history, the lowest order among the personnel dispatched to the Black Ink battlefield by the Cave Heavens and Paradises was the Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm. They would never send somebody in the Fifth Order as they were too weak to join the war against the Black Ink clan. As a result, almost all of the talented individuals accumulated by the human race over the eons had been gathered on the Black Ink battlefield. That was also the reason why Yang Kai felt that the overall strength in Langya Paradise was hugely different from what he imagined when he went there in the past. It turned out that what he saw was not the full heritage of Langya Paradise. The existence of purifying light had resolved the problem that had always been insurmountable to the human race. Hence, it was only natural that the news would rouse the excitement of the people. It was conceivable that the morale of the human race army would increase sharply once this information was spread to the public. Morale was something intangible, but it played a big role in any war, even the one between the human race and the Black Ink clan. Yang Kai gave a gentle reminder, "Seniors, I must inform you that using this secret technique is not without cost. Just as this junior mentioned earlier, this secret technique is cast by drawing upon the powers of the burning light and serene glimmer through the two marks on my hands. Since this secret technique and the means to activate it were given to me by the burning light and serene glimmer, casting it is essentially effortless on my part. However, performing the secret technique requires a certain amount of resources. This junior has some materials on hand, but they are not inexhaustible. So, this junior would like to ask the seniors present to warn others to try and avoid being corrupted by Black Ink strength as much as possible." Lewin nodded and said, "That's only natural. After fighting for so many years, it has become a habit. Even if the news spreads, the disciples will not allow themselves to be easily corrupted by Black Ink strength." Zhong Liang looked at Yang Kai and asked, "Do you have anything else to say?" Yang Kai shook his head, "No." "Good." Zhong Liang turned to look at the others. The Black Ink clan is still besieging Blue Sky Pass at this moment, so it is not convenient for you to stay here for a long time. Let's deal with the war first. Somebody inquired, "Where will you place young boy?" Zhong Liang had mentioned earlier that he would set up an area within the inner sanctum where Yang Kai would be responsible for helping the disciples to purify the Black Ink strength in their bodies. It was only natural for this location to be clarified in advance. Zhong Liang pondered for a while before he spoke. "How about the central square? It's the most central spot." Everybody nodded in unison. "Good." Now that the discussion was over, everybody left quickly. They were the masters in charge of the various defense lines after all, so it was not appropriate for them to remain here for too long. Before leaving, Lewin said a few words with Yang Kai in private. He did not say much, and simply told Yang Kai to let him know immediately if there was anything he needed. They were one family after all. He was happy to help out Yang Kai within the limits of his abilities. For that, he even left his contact information with Yang Kai. Yang Kai couldn't help feeling grateful. After everybody left, Zhong Liang beckoned to Yang Kai, "Come with me." The two of them strode out of the conference hall. Feng Ying was waiting for them outside and, with a flicker, all three of them sped off in a certain direction. A short while later, they arrived in the sky above a huge square. Zhong Liang explained, "During the battle, you will be stationed here. There will likely be an endless stream of disciples who come asking for help after becoming corrupted by Black Ink strength. When that happens, we will be relying on you." Yang Kai cupped his fist. "Senior Zhong may rest assured. As long as it is an issue caused by Black Ink strength, this junior will definitely solve it." Zhong Liang nodded in satisfaction before turning to Feng Ying. "From now on, your task is to protect him. Do not allow any harm to come to him. If you lack the necessary manpower, I grant you the right to mobilize the people of the inner sanctum at will." "Disciple understands." Feng Ying cupped her fist. After watching Zhong Liang leave, Yang Kai glanced at Feng Ying. "Many thanks for your hard work, Martial Aunt Feng." Feng Ying shook her head. "It's nothing." On the contrary, you should take some time to treat your injuries and recover. You were rushed off your feet earlier and didn't even have the time to tend to your wounds. I'm afraid you will become very busy soon. In the previous battle with the Black Ink Clan army, Yang Kai had transformed into a Grand Dragon and used his body as a shield to protect his allies. Naturally, he was battered and bruised from the Black Ink Clan's assault. After entering the inner sanctum, Zhong Liang had then brought him all over the place. Therefore, Yang Kai had not had the time to treat his injuries so far. His appearance at the moment could only be described as unkempt, and there were various bloodstains all over his body. Of course, his injuries were not important given his recuperative abilities, but his strength had indeed been heavily expended. Even he would need some time to recover and recuperate. All right, then I shall trouble you to stand guard, Marshal Ant Feng. Yang Kai nodded and sat down cross-legged without another word. Stuffing a recovery spirit pill into his mouth, he slowly began to refine the medicinal efficacies. Despite being inside the inner sanctum, one could still vaguely hear the sound of battle coming from outside the Great Pass. In addition, the impact caused by the shock waves of battle would occasionally be transmitted from the outside. It could be seen that the war was very intense. Although the life-or-death battle outside raged on incessantly, Yang Kai and Feng Ying enjoyed a peace that was as calm as water. They waited for half a day only for nobody to come. Yang Kai focused on healing in the meantime, without feeling bored or frustrated. All of a sudden, there seemed to be a commotion coming from the side. Feng Ying immediately looked in that direction and saw several streams of lights speeding over at a high speed. There were 6 or 7 figures in total. The person in the lead stood in midair and looked around below him with all his might. Without warning, he pointed in the direction where Yang Kai and Feng Ying were located and shouted loudly, "This way! This way!" At the same time, he took the lead and rushed over. Feng Ying instantly became vigilant. Zhong Liang had entrusted Yang Kai's safety to her, so naturally she did not dare to take her mission lightly. Having seen purifying light in action, she deeply understood the importance of Yang Kai's existence. Fortunately, the newcomers did not act rashly. As they approached, the group's leader immediately cupped his fist, "Senior Sister Feng." Feng Ying nodded lightly and asked, "What's the situation?" That person pointed behind him and explained, "They have been corroded by black ink strength. Marshal Uncle mentioned that we should withdraw as soon as possible if we ever find ourselves in such a situation, and come here to find somebody named Yang Kai. Supposedly, he has the means to resolve the situation." Truthfully speaking, if it had not been an 8th Order ancestor who told him about this matter, he would not have believed those words at all. In the past, the people who were corrupted by black ink strength would sacrifice a part of their small universe as soon as possible to resolve the crisis. However, it was too late for that now. The speed of the black ink strength's corrosion was very fast. If they wanted to sacrifice their small universe at this point, there was no saying how much they would need to give up. There was a high possibility that doing so would endanger their life. In other words, if Yang Kai could not resolve this matter, then the people who were corroded by black ink strength would most likely die on the spot. It was just that those words had come from an 8th Order ancestor. If they could preserve the integrity of their small universe, then they were willing to give this method a try. While speaking, he glanced at Yang Kai, who had already stood up. "Are you Yang Kai?" Yang Kai nodded. "Indeed. I've never seen him before. Moreover, the aura coming from him does not seem very powerful. He is definitely not in the 7th Order. Can a person like him really remove the threat of the black ink strength's corrosion?" That person felt his heart sinking in his chest and did not dare to hope for too much. Yang Kai looked behind that person and saw that 7 people had come in total. Leaving aside the leader, there were 6 others in groups of 2. Each group contained one person who seemed to be struggling and urging their power as if resisting something, while the other person in the group had an expression of great concern mixed with a trace of vigilance on their face. Yang Kai immediately understood the situation. The 3 people who seemed to be struggling and silently urging their power to resist something were probably the ones whose small universe had been corroded by black ink strength. They were currently fighting the corrosion of the black ink strength, but their efforts were tantamount to drinking poison to quench their thirst. In other words, their efforts were not having much of an effect and could only serve to delay the process of becoming corrupted. Meanwhile, the other three were most likely in charge of monitoring the ones who had been corrupted by black ink strength. After all, if things spiraled out of control, then it might become necessary to execute their comrades. Lastly, there was also a Seventh Order Open Heaven Realm Master acting as the group's leader. This arrangement was fairly reasonable, lest somebody became completely corrupted by black ink strength on the way here. If that were to happen, such a lineup would be capable of dealing with the situation. Can you save them? The leader clearly did not dare to expect too much, but he couldn't help asking anyway. Yang Kai glanced at that person and nodded, "Don't worry." He did not waste any more time and quickly activated the yin and yang element powers. Yellow and blue lights bloomed into existence and soon transformed into a pure white light. "Let those three stand together," Yang Kai instructed. Although the three of them had been corrupted by black ink strength, they were stubbornly holding on to their true nature by the skin of their teeth. With the help of their companions, they stood together in one place. The white light immediately engulfed them. Foaming had seen this situation many times already, so it was no longer surprising to her. On the other hand, the four others who escorted those three here felt as though their hearts were leaping up into their throats. They stared unblinkingly at the sight in front of them, not willing to miss a single thing. Sizzling sounds filled the air, and the three men revealed expressions of pain. Fortunately, their pained expressions gradually calmed down as the black ink strength in their bodies was purified and dispelled. After a while, Yang Kai withdrew his hand and the white light continued to linger. Shrouded in the white light, those three men successively opened their eyes with surprised expressions on their faces. "How is it?" the Seventh Order leader asked nervously. Looking at them, it seemed as though the black ink strength had truly been dispelled. However, until he received a definite answer, he did not dare to believe that it was true. "Squad leader, I think we're all right now," one of them replied. "What do you mean by that? Are you all right or not?" The squad leader glared. Another person added, "It's probably fine now. The black ink strength has been dispelled." "Open your small universes," the squad leader ordered. The three men obediently did as they were told and opened up their small universes. The divine senses of the squad leader and the other three men surged as they probed the situation together. A moment later, they looked at each other with shocked expressions. There was not the slightest trace of black ink strength left. It was unbelievable. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4955, Blue Sky Pass Heritage. "Are you uncomfortable anywhere?" The squad leader looked at the three of them with concern. All three of them shook their heads, indicating that they were truly fine. Only then did the squad leader turn to look at Yang Kai with a complicated look in his eyes. The Eighth Order ancestor had informed him about this matter, but he had not dared to believe those words. The human masters who remained on the black ink battlefield all this time were all too familiar with black ink strength. Once they were touched by it, it would cling to them like maggots on rotting bones. The only way to protect themselves was to take decisive action within a limited time after becoming corroded by black ink strength. It was only because of the Eighth Order ancestors' orders that he decided to give this method a chance. Leading his squad members, he brought them back to Blue Sky Pass and came to the central square. What happened next was beyond his expectations. Yang Kai had actually managed to solve this problem that had plagued the human race for countless years. What's more, judging by the way the secret technique was cast, performing it did not seem to be difficult. It could even be said to be extremely easy. He had never seen such means like the white light before, but he could clearly see the black ink strength dissipating under its shroud with ease. A sense of excitement suddenly surged up in his heart. "I can't believe the human race has developed the means to resolve the corrosion of black ink strength. This problem has tormented us for eons, but will no longer be a problem in the future. I can foresee just how much the morale of our people will be boosted once the news spreads to the public." He solemnly cupped his fist. "Thanks are not enough for this kindness. In the future, please feel free to let us know if you ever need our help, Brother Yang." He was a 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master from one of the cave heavens or paradises. In terms of status and hierarchy, he was definitely in a higher position compared to Yang Kai. Nevertheless, he addressed Yang Kai as Brother Yang, which showed how grateful he was. Likewise, the 6 behind him also cupped their fists and bowed. In particular, the gratitude of those 3 who were rescued earlier was beyond words. They knew that if it was not for Yang Kai's help, the best outcome for them would be to sacrifice a part of their small universe and experience a decline in their cultivation. That was something no Open Heaven Realm Master would ever want to experience. Although the profounding spirit fruit, which could mend damaged small universes, could be found on the black ink battlefield, there were extremely few of them, certainly not enough to go around. Even if they found one of the rare profounding spirit fruits, they generally gave them up to those with higher cultivations. Naturally, that meant those with cultivation below the high-rank Open Heaven realm would never get the chance to consume one. Yang Kai not only helped them to resolve the issue regarding the corrosion of black ink strength, but also ensured that their cultivation remained intact. Such a grace was not something that could be made up for with simple thanks. You are all too polite. This is my duty. Yang Kai returned the bow. The war is ongoing, so we cannot stay here for long. We will now return to the battlefield. When the war is over, if we are lucky enough to survive, we will share a drink with you, Brother Yang. The squad leader cupped his fist and quickly said. Yang Kai's expression became solemn. I wish you good fortune in battle. The group of 7 came and left in a hurry. Regardless of the cave heaven or paradise they came from before, they had completely placed their own survival aside on this battlefield. Looking at the 7 departing figures, Yang Kai sighed softly. He did not know when these 7 people had come to the black ink battlefield, or how long they could endure this cruel war. There might come a day when they were killed by a black ink clansman and died a tragic death. Be that as it may, it should never be forgotten that they were also the sons and daughters of their parents, or the parents of their own children. After seeing the situation on the black ink battlefield side with his own eyes, Yang Kai couldn't help feeling a little depressed. On the contrary, these people who had been living in this situation for so long had already become accustomed to such matters. He suddenly turned to look at Feng Ying. Just now, those people called the person in the lead squad leader. Is the formation of the human race army divided into individual squads? Feng Ying became more and more certain that Yang Kai knew nothing about the Great Passes. That was because all the questions he asked were related to general knowledge and common sense issues. However, she had already experienced similar situations several times before, so she was no longer surprised by his questions and explained patiently, a squad is the most basic unit at any Great Pass. In general, 10 to 15 people form a squad, 100 people form a battalion, and 500 people make up a division. Of course, the numbers vary slightly from case to case, but this is the general makeup. The framework of the human race army was based upon how Great Battle Heaven organizes itself, since they are very experienced in army warfare. Yang Kai nodded lightly. He had heard of Great Battle Heaven even when he was new to the 3,000 worlds, so he knew that this cave heaven was different from the others in the sense that they managed themselves like an army. He had wondered why Great Battle Heaven organized their disciples in such a manner, but now, it would seem that the reason was related to the black ink battlefield. Tell me more about the Great Passes, he said. She asked, what do you want to know? Anything is fine. Feng Ying fell silent for a moment before she suddenly sat cross-legged in front of Yang Kai, stretched out her hand, and gestured on the ground in front of her. It didn't take long for her to draw a picture of the 8 trigrams on the ground before her. Generally speaking, the deployment of the troops at every Great Pass can be based on this diagram. I also told you just now that the framework of the human race army is based on the squad as the basic unit. Above a squad is a battalion, above a battalion is a division, and above a division is an army. Moreover, every Great Pass has 4 armies which are titled East, West, South, and North. This arrangement is so that 4 cardinal directions surrounding the Great Passes can be guarded at the same time. The formation can be further subdivided into smaller parts. Each army is further divided into left and right wings, each composed of a number of divisions. For example, the North Army's 2 wings each have a 1st Division, 2nd Division, 3rd Division, and so on and so forth. Do you understand so far? Yang Kai nodded, yes. The situation on the black ink battlefield side reminded him of the battle between humans and demons in the star boundary. At the time, all the humans on the star boundary had been conscripted as soldiers. The 61st Army he commanded had also made great contributions to the war against the demon race. The past flashed through his mind, as vividly as though it was just yesterday. Feng Ying continued, Marshal Uncle Zhong Liang is the Western Army's army commander. He is responsible for overseeing the defense line protected by the Western Army, the direction we returned from before. Meanwhile, Elder Liu from Yinyang Cave Heaven belongs to the Southern Army. If I remember correctly, he serves as its 4th Division commander. Each wing of an army is overseen by one of the 2 vice army commanders, while each division is assigned a division commander. Only 8th Order Open Heaven Realm ancestors are qualified to take up these positions. Naturally, the same goes for the army commanders. They are chosen from among the strongest and most experienced 8th Order masters. When it comes to the battalions, peak 7th Order masters generally fill such roles. The battalions are named after the 8 trigrams, in other words, heaven, river, mountain, thunder, wind, fire, earth, and lake. Take myself for example. Formally, I hold the rank of Battalion Commander of the Western Army's Right Wing, 1st Division Heaven Battalion. Below battalions are squads. There is no special naming system for squads, and if they do have a special name, it is generally chosen by their squad leader according to his or her preference, or by the squad members themselves. The higher-ups will not restrict them in that sense. Among the squad leaders, some may be in the 6th Order, but most are 7th Order. Yang Kai listened silently, gradually gaining some understanding of the situation in the Great Passes. In any case, the division of troops was certainly very detailed and meticulous. He raised his brow slightly after giving it some thought. Back at the Grand Hall earlier, I saw a total of 53 8th Order masters. Leaving aside the 4 army commanders and the 8 vice commanders, does that mean that there are 41 divisions in Blue Sky Pass? Feng Ying shook her head. There are 60 divisions in total. It is impossible for Marshal Uncle Zhong Liang to summon all the 8th Order Open Heaven Realm ancestors. After all, somebody needs to be in charge on the battlefield. Those who came back were just the majority. Yang Kai nodded in understanding and mentally calculated the total number of people in Blue Sky Pass. The answer left him feeling slightly horrified. So there are some 30,000 people in Blue Sky Pass? 30,000 might not seem like a huge number. Thinking back to the time he served as the commander of the 61st Army in the Star Boundary, the number of people in his army had far exceeded that number. When it was first formed, the 61st Army had some 300,000 people in it, which was more than 10 times that of the entire Blue Sky Pass. However, the 300,000 people in the 61st Army were nothing compared to the 30,000 people in Blue Sky Pass, because everyone in Blue Sky Pass was an Open Heaven Realm master. Even the weakest among them were in the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm. That was a terrifying lineup. If such a group of people were recalled to the 3,000 worlds, they could trample all the great territories with ease. They would be invincible since there was nobody who could be their opponent. Be that as it may, such an impressive army with such a glorious lineup was trapped in the Black Ink battlefield. Even though they had been fighting the Black Ink clan for countless years, there remained no hope of victory in sight. More importantly, this was only the situation at Blue Sky Pass. There were 108 cave heavens and paradises, which meant that there were 108 corresponding Great Passes. And the situation at each Great Pass was almost identical to Blue Sky Pass. The deeper he thought about it, the more his scalp tingled in fear. Throughout the ages, how much manpower did the cave heavens and paradises pour into the Black Ink battlefield? How long did it take for them to accumulate the power of the human race to such a scale? More or less. Feng Ying nodded lightly. She did not know the exact number of people in Blue Sky Pass. In fact, nobody knew the exact number because there were always a number of humans who would meet their deaths in each battle. However, the exact number should not be too far off from the numbers that he estimated. Although 30,000 might sound like a huge number, after dividing them to the east, west, south, and north, their numbers were not that large anymore. The four directions surrounding Blue Sky Pass would have some 7,000 or 8,000 guarding them. Marshal Ant Foam, you are a battalion commander. Is it all right if you don't go to the battlefield? Yang Kai asked. She shook her head. My subordinates can take care of themselves even if I am not there. It's not a big deal. On the contrary, your safety is of utmost priority. Nodding, Yang Kai began asking about other issues. I noticed that there were many warships on the previous battlefield. Feng Ying nodded and explained. Warships can be said to be the biggest reliance for the human race to compete against the Black Ink clan on the battlefield. 8th Order and 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters have a certain degree of resistance to the Black Ink strength even if they directly enter the battlefield. As long as the duration is not too long, the Black Ink strength would not pose a problem for them. However, there are more than just 8th Order and 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters in the Inner Sanctum. There are far more 6th Order and 5th Order Open Masters. In particular, the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters have suffered a decline in their cultivation as a result of sacrificing parts of their small universes. Since their small universes are all incomplete to begin with, they are easily corrupted by the Black Ink strength. Without a warship's protection, they would instantly turn into Black Ink disciples once they come into contact with the Black Ink strength. Therefore, you would rarely see any 6th Order or 5th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters on the battlefield. They rely on their warships to fend off their enemies instead. Essentially, each squad is assigned a generic warship while battalions have larger and more powerful battleships. Yang Kai recalled the time when Feng Ying had been pursued by the Black Ink clan army. At the time, she had leaped out of the warship to stop the enemy by herself. Judging by the situation, there was a high possibility that the people on the warship had belonged to her battalion. They had all been her subordinates. Marshal Peak, Chapter 4956, Sharp Increase in Morale. When they returned from the Black Ink clan's domain, they had brought back more than 300 people with them. These people were former Black Ink disciples. Although 300 could not be considered many, these people were enough to form 3 battalions based on Blue Sky Pass organizational structure. That was not a small number either. Seeing as 500 people made up a division, 3 battalions worth of people could be said to be more than half the forces of a division. As might be expected, the number of 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters among the former Black Ink disciples who were brought back was a bit small, and most were only in the 5th and 6th Order. During their conversation, 2 more streams of lights sped towards them from a certain direction. Yang Kai looked up and saw faint signs of Black Ink strength coming from one of them. The other person seemed to be guarding his companion. After having prior experience, how could Yang Kai fail to realize that one of them had been corroded by Black Ink strength, while the other was a companion in charge of providing an escort? The person who came swept his gaze around from above. Then, he immediately landed in front of Yang Kai and asked anxiously, "Are you Yang Kai?" Yang Kai nodded. 2 colored lights bloomed from his hands as he walked towards the person who had been corroded by Black Ink strength. "Leave this to me." The person who came glanced at Feng Ying, and Feng Ying nodded lightly in response. Only then did he step away from his companion. A white light enveloped the other person. Accompanied by a series of sizzling sounds, Black Ink strength was dispelled and purified from his body. It only took several moments for everything to be dealt with. Those 2 carefully checked the situation inside the small universe and were filled with a mixture of surprise and delight. Just like the first batch of people who came here, they returned to the battlefield quickly after fervently expressing their gratitude. Afterwards, an intermittent flow of Open Heaven Realm Masters corroded by Black Ink strength came to the central square with the support of their companions. Yang Kai had been assigned to this area to help dispel Black Ink strength in the first place, so it was only natural that he did not refuse anybody who came to him. Besides, purifying light was neither complicated to activate nor consumed large amounts of his own strength. He could basically help the people who came here restore order to chaos and recover their true nature in just a few breaths. Not many people came at first, but those who did were filled with anxiety, anticipation, and uncertainty. Nobody had ever experienced such a situation before after all. The 8th Order Division commanders had explained the situation, so it was unlikely for anything to go wrong. Nevertheless, nobody could feel at ease without witnessing it for themselves. It was not until they saw the miracle with their own eyes that they finally felt completely relieved. As time passed, the number of people who came to seek treatment from Yangkai increased sharply for some reason. Most of them no longer seemed as worried as the others from before, and even the people who escorted their companions here simply observed Yangkai with curiosity. Yangkai became extremely busy as a result. He generally rescued a dozen people a day, but there were also days when he had to rescue as many as 100. About half a month passed in this manner before he finally had time to rest. Yangkai looked at Fengying in confusion and asked, "Is the situation where people are corrupted by black ink strength usually so severe? Didn't you say that they have the protection of their warships?" If this was the case, then prior to his arrival, the casualties among the humans after each war would be far too great. A rough estimate indicated that he had saved several hundred people in just this half-month alone. This number only included those who were corroded by black ink strength and not those who had perished on the battlefield. Even Fengying had noticed that something was wrong. Fortunately, she had kept in contact with the outside world and understood the reason for all this. With a shake of her head, she answered his question. It was not like this in the past. Although there had always been people who were corroded by black ink strength on the battlefield, such incidences did not occur so often. It's only like this now because of you. Because of me? Yangkai seemed taken aback by her words. What does this have to do with me? All of a sudden, he seemed to realize something and his face cramped. Don't tell me. She nodded. Information about you has spread on the battlefield. Everybody knows that there is somebody like you in the inner sanctum who can use mysterious means to dispel and purify black ink strength. That is why they have stopped being so reserved when fighting against the Black Ink clan. In the past, becoming corroded by black ink strength was an issue that could not be resolved. Therefore, everybody acted cautiously to prevent themselves from coming into contact with the black ink strength as much as possible. However, Yangkai's appearance had brought some changes to the situation on the battlefield. Although the division commanders had explained Yangkai's existence and purifying light to the public from the very beginning, nobody had witnessed or personally verified the situation before. Who could be certain that this information was true? It was not that they did not believe in the Eighth Order Masters, but that the situation was simply too bizarre to believe so haphazardly. When those who were initially rescued returned to the battlefield, though, the news began to spread rapidly. The increasing number of people whom Yangkai rescued only caused the news to spread even faster. These people came from all armies and divisions in Blue Sky Pass. Their companions had witnessed them becoming corroded by black ink strength, returning to the inner sanctum, and reappearing on the battlefield in perfect condition after a short while. A quick inquiry was enough for them to learn about the treatment that could be found in the inner sanctum. It was true that there was somebody in the inner sanctum who could dispel black ink strength that had seeped into their small universes through some mysterious means. The division commanders had spoken the truth. Hence, morale instantly soared. The people in the eastern, western, southern, and northern armies no longer had any scruples and went all out in their battles against the Black Ink clan. It was only natural for the number of people who became corrupted by black ink strength to increase as a result. When the human race fought the Black Ink clan in the past, they would still feel shackled despite having warships as support. Now that they no longer had any scruples, not only was their morale boosted significantly, but their ferocity also increased considerably. Upon learning the truth, Yangkai did not know whether to laugh or cry. What could he say? He could only remain in his post with peace of mind and help to dispel black ink strength from the bodies of those who were sent here so that they could return to the battlefield. The changes in the humans were deeply felt by the Black Ink clan. The reason behind the changes was unknown, but the humans suddenly seemed extremely enthusiastic and full of fighting spirit. Due to the deaths of the Black Ink clansmen, countless black ink clouds of varying sizes would form all over the battlefield every time a war was fought. These black ink clouds often became supplementary tools for the Black Ink clan because the humans generally stayed far away from them. But now, things were different. The black ink clouds could no longer act as deterrents against the humans. In the past, by seeking refuge inside the black ink clouds when injured, The Black Ink clan could generally throw off their pursuers and preserve their lives. However, the humans seem to have gone mad now. Even if a Black Ink clansman hid inside the Black Ink clouds, the humans would boldly rush in to attack them, as though they would never give up unless their opponent was dead. The Black Ink clan was stunned. The combat experience and doctrine they had built up over millennia suddenly became useless in the face of these changes. In their panicked and unprepared state, they suffered massive losses. What particularly puzzled the Black Ink clan was the humans' attitude towards the Black Ink disciples. In the past, the humans would put forth their best efforts to ruthlessly slaughter all of the Black Ink disciples they encountered. Now, though, they had begun to capture these Black Ink disciples whenever possible. As a result, many of the Black Ink clansmen lost their subordinates without realizing and could only watch in anguish as their servants were taken away. The situation of the humans improved significantly on the battlefield. Feng Ying had always remained in contact with the front lines, so she was not surprised to receive this information. If this trend continues, it won't take more than a few years to repel the Black Ink clan. She looked excited. A few years? Yang Kai was stunned speechless. How could a single battle last several years? Isn't that too long? A few years is considered a short time. Whenever the Black Ink clan army besieges a great pass, the war tends to last several years. It might even take up to several decades, or even 100 years to resolve. She sighed slightly. There is no way for us to get rid of the Black Ink clan once and for all. Every time the Black Ink clan army is defeated, they will retreat to their territory to recuperate and come back again after they have accumulated enough strength. This situation has repeated itself over and over again at every great pass on the Black Ink battlefield for hundreds of thousands of years. Yang Kai was stunned by those words. If this war lasts for several years, then won't I have to remain in the central square for several years? This is a little different from what I imagined. He had initially assumed that he would follow the human race army onto the battlefield to destroy the enemy after he came here. Contrary to his expectations, he had been assigned to treat his allies in the rear because of his ability to cast purifying light. It was not to say that this was an unimportant matter, and Yang Kai was well aware of the importance of his assignment. The stability of the rear would largely determine the outcome of the war after all. Not to mention, his actions had greatly increased the morale of the human race army and affected the overall trend on the battlefield. But if he had to stay here all the time, that would be too dull. He would prefer to kill the Black Ink clan on the battlefield and contribute to the human race. Seemingly seeing through his thoughts, Feng Ying smiled and said, "Be patient. Since your ability cannot be taught to others, Marshal Uncle Zhong and the others will not let you go anywhere else." Those words troubled Yang Kai so much that he felt as though his teeth ached, his stomach ached, and his whole body ached. Marshal Uncle Zhong immediately arrived at the mention of his name, carrying an individual with a ferocious expression and eyes filled with pitch-black darkness in each hand. He appeared next to the two of them and tossed both people in his grasp in front of Yang Kai and smiled brilliantly. "Young boy, did you run into any trouble?" "What trouble could I possibly face?" At first, the people who came to Yang Kai for treatment had harbored some doubts about his ability. However, once the news spread, those who later came to ask for help only had big smiles on their faces. Every one of them had been very friendly. Some even tried to build a connection with him and tried to become sworn brothers on the spot. Furthermore, all of them had promised to treat him to a drink if they survived the battle before departing again. If these people were to keep their promises, then he would need to spend a whole year just to attend all those banquets. Yang Kai shook his head. Looking at the two men who had been tossed to the ground in front of him, he raised his brow inquiringly. "Black Ink disciples?" Black Ink disciples had lost their true nature. They were different from the human masters who still retained some of their reasoning after being invaded by Black Ink strength. During this period, Yang Kai had also rescued many Black Ink disciples brought back from the battlefield. Zhong Liang nodded. "I caught them on the battlefield and brought them back. Will it be a problem?" Yang Kai replied, "Not at all." Taking a step forward, he used purifying light on the two Black Ink disciples. Meanwhile, Feng Ying stepped forward and whispered something to Zhong Liang. Zhong Liang nodded to indicate that he understood. A short while later, the black ink strength was fully dispelled. The two black ink disciples who recovered their true natures had confused and ashamed expressions on their faces. Every black ink disciple clearly recalled all the actions they took in the past. It was precisely because they retained those memories that they felt ashamed. After all, some of them might even have killed their own clansmen on the battlefield. Zhongliang waved at them and motioned for them to step aside. Although those two had many questions, the Eighth Order ancestor had spoken, so they could only step back obediently. Zhongliang walked up to Yang Kai, patted him on the shoulder, and said earnestly, "Brat, what you are doing is very important to Blue Sky Pass. It may be boring, but please bear with it. Once the war ends, I assure you your contributions will be fully accounted for." Marshall Peak, Chapter 4957, Impossible to Satisfy Everyone? I am only doing my duty. I don't dare to take credit, Yang Kai said humbly. Compared to his allies fighting on the front lines, it could be said that he was extremely safe inside Blue Sky Pass. Everybody else was doing their part in the fight against the Black Ink clan. Some people had even died for this cause. In comparison, his ability to purify and dispel black ink strength had been given to him by the burning light and serene glimmer. It was not even his own ability, so how could he dare to take credit for it? Zhongliang nodded. It's good if you can think that way, but it does not change the fact that you have contributed greatly. Work should be rewarded. That is the rule here. The battle outside the Great Pass is fierce, so it is inconvenient for me to stay here for long. If you need anything, just let Fengning know. She will cooperate with you.
Yes,
Yang Kai responded. After watching Zhongliang and the two rescued black ink disciples leave, Yang Kai sat down cross-legged and examined his small universe. He had been mulling over a problem recently. How was he going to find an opportunity to break through to the Seventh Order Open Heaven realm? Unable to fight on the front lines, he could only remain at his position in the central square and passively wait for somebody to ask him for help. Therefore, he had a lot of free time on his hands for idle thoughts. Now that his cultivation could be said to have reached the peak of the Sixth Order Open Heaven realm, further efforts to refine resources would have little effect on him. Furthermore, he had been raising a large number of humans and small stone race inside his small universe. To add to that, the time in his small universe flowed several times faster than the outside world. As things stood, he didn't even need to cultivate for the heritage of his small universe to grow stronger with every passing moment. Therefore, he currently suffered from a faint bloated feeling. That was naturally because his heritage had exceeded the limit that his current cultivation could store. Like how one would feel bloated after eating too much food. His capacity as a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master made it difficult for him to accommodate so much power. If he wanted to resolve this issue, then his best choice was to advance into the Seventh Order Open Heaven Realm. Unfortunately, he had already gone into retreat when he was in Black Territory in an attempt to advance into the Seventh Order Open Heaven Realm. His attempt had turned out to be ineffective, and there was no progress in regards to a breakthrough. Since entering retreat once had proven to be ineffective, it would likely be futile to enter retreat again. The faint traces of opportunity could not be obtained from secluded cultivation. In order to advance into the Seventh Order Open Heaven Realm, the proprietress had spent over 100 years in retreat in Voidland. That showed just how difficult it was for an Open Heaven Realm Master to advance from the Sixth Order to the Seventh Order. After all, it was a significant leap from the mid-rank Open Heaven Realm to the high-rank Open Heaven Realm. Throughout time immemorial, countless heroes had failed to overcome this obstacle and remained stuck in the Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm for their entire lives. It would be very difficult for them to reach the Seventh Order Open Heaven Realm in that state. In order to resolve the situation in his small universe, Yang Kai had been using his heritage to cultivate more profounding bamboo in his small universe. He had no other choice. The heritage of his small universe constantly became stronger and stronger, but he had no means of breaking through to the next order. If he did not use up some of his heritage, his small universe would become painfully bloated. Consequently, the profounding bamboo thrived in his small universe and grew wildly in numbers. Since he had one of the 4 universe pillars, the world spring, the profounding bamboo was of little use to him. Be that as it may, The profoundine bamboo would be useful to the human masters in Blue Sky Pass. It would never hurt for him to cultivate more of them. He had given a small batch of them to Feng Ying. Although he only gave her a dozen or so bamboo shoots in total, she was absolutely overjoyed. It stood to reason that she understood the power of the 12 minor universe pillars. After all, there were quite a few high-rank open heaven realm masters among the human race who possessed one of them. It was just that the profoundine bamboo had not appeared before. The other 11 types of the 12 minor universe pillars were different from the profoundine bamboo in that they could not be cultivated in large numbers, much less shared with others. While the effects of the various 12 minor pillars were relatively similar, the profoundine bamboo was undoubtedly the most useful in a situation like the Black Ink battlefield. That was because the profoundine bamboo could multiply continuously. If the conditions permitted, every single high-rank open heaven realm master would be able to cultivate a bamboo forest in their small universe in the future. The cave heavens and paradises had poured great efforts into searching for the profoundine bamboo in the past, but their efforts had never been fruitful. Feng Ying never expected that Yang Kai would possess the profoundine bamboo. In this way, as long as enough time passed, all the high-rank open heaven realm masters in Blue Sky Pass would be blessed with their very own profoundine bamboo. The profoundine bamboo was highly effective at boosting their resistance towards the Black Ink strength, which would be of great help in the war effort. Unfortunately, the battle was raging fiercely at the moment, so it was not the appropriate time to bring up the matter of the profoundine bamboo. Hence, Feng Ying suggested that Yang Kai inform the 8th Order ancestors about this matter after the current war had ended, a suggestion he readily agreed to. When he inquired about her advancement into the 7th Order Open Heaven realm, Feng Ying recalled her memories for some time before she responded, "I was fighting the Black Ink clan on the battlefield at the time. When my life was hanging by a thread, I felt a sudden enlightenment come to me. Thankfully, I survived that battle, and upon my return to the inner sanctum, I swiftly went into retreat and broke through to the 7th Order." Yang Kai nodded lightly. Most people would experience great terror when faced with death, but their minds would also become clear when faced with such a threat, and it would often be easier to comprehend things that had remained unclear to them previously. He himself had also broken through his shackles when he was faced with death, so he did not doubt her answer. Besides, she had no reason to deceive him. The next few days passed by as usual. Yang Kai was stationed at the central square of Blue Sky Pass, and countless people came to him for treatment. Under purifying light, the Black Ink strength in their bodies was reduced to nothing. During this period, there were also some 7th Order Open Heaven realm masters who came to him for help. After treating them, he would question them about the situation surrounding their advancement into the 7th Order Open Heaven realm. These 7th Order masters were quite open about their experiences. He had saved their lives, and what he asked was not a secret either, so there was no need for them to conceal anything. On top of that, they were desperate to form a connection with Yang Kai, so it was only natural for them to answer his questions to the best of their abilities. Everybody experienced different things when they advanced into the 7th Order Open Heaven realm, but these experiences could generally be divided into 3 types. For the first type, their advancement just came naturally. Many of them eventually experienced the opportunity to break through after they had accumulated enough heritage. The second type achieved their advancement through voluntary retreat and broke through to the next order while they were in seclusion. Lastly, the third type experienced similar situations as Feng Ying. In fact, there were quite a few who gained valuable insight when wandering the border of life and death. Yang Kai had already gone into retreat once, so going into retreat again would probably be futile. With his aptitude, he believed that his advancement was simply a matter of course if he continued to accumulate experience. The main reason he could not realize the opportunity for a breakthrough was that his cultivation time had been too short. Most cultivators would spend hundreds or even thousands of years for their cultivation to improve until they reached the open heaven realm, regardless of how great their talent and aptitude was. Furthermore, after advancing into the open heaven realm, each advancement to the next order would require an even longer period of accumulation. The higher the order, the longer they would need to cultivate for. Under normal circumstances, advancing from the 5th Order Open Heaven realm to the 6th Order Open Heaven realm would require thousands of years' worth of accumulation. It would take even longer to advance from the 6th Order Open Heaven Realm to the 7th Order Open Heaven Realm. Accordingly, it might even take tens of thousands of years to advance from the 7th Order Open Heaven Realm to the 8th Order Open Heaven Realm. Not much time had passed since Yang Kai started cultivating. There was no need to mention the time before he advanced into the Open Heaven Realm. It was enough just to look at the amount of time he spent after advancing into the Open Heaven Realm to reach his current achievements. Back when he was in the Shattered Heaven, Yang Kai had been forced to cut off his future prospects and advance into the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm in front of everybody outside the Shadowless Cave Heaven. Afterwards, he entered Shadowless Cave Heaven and consumed a mid-rank world fruit, which allowed him to smoothly advance to the 6th Order. There was no time for him to accumulate it all during this brief period. Furthermore, only a few hundred years had passed since he advanced into the 6th Order Open Heaven Realm. He only managed to obtain his achievements by relying on various opportunities. The time he spent on accumulation was extremely short. Although cultivating steadily was not a huge issue, nobody could say for certain how many years it would take before he gained insight on the fleeting opportunity for a breakthrough. That was most likely the main reason why Yang Kai had not been able to comprehend the opportunity for advancement after so long. Even if the heritage of his small universe was saturated to the extent where he felt bloated, he would not be able to advance to the 7th Order smoothly in his current condition. After understanding this point, Yang Kai couldn't help feeling troubled. The passage of time was not something that could be accelerated after all. Now that he was on the black ink battlefield, his thirst for strength had grown far stronger than when he was in the 3,000 worlds. On this chaotic battlefield, he could only ensure his safety by having enough strength to protect himself. Otherwise, he would not have been so desperate to advance to the 7th Order. It was not a bad thing to cultivate calmly and steadily after all. Unfortunately, this place was not the 3,000 worlds, where peace and stability could be found almost everywhere. Yang Kai had seen the situation where the Black Ink clan army besieged Blue Sky Pass. Zhong Liang had assigned a post for him here so that his life would never be endangered. But could he really hide in this place for the rest of his life without taking another step outside? This was not the life he wanted. If he were honest, during the time he spent here, Yang Kai was practically raring to go after listening to the commotion from the fighting and explosions coming from the outside every single day. Unfortunately, he had no choice but to remain in this place because he had the means to dispel and purify Black Ink strength. He did not regret exposing his ability. Since he had the means to help, it was impossible for him to stand by and watch as his allies got corrupted by Black Ink strength without doing anything. He was honestly thankful that he could rescue the allies who were corrupted by it. It was just that, as a man, he looked forward to fighting the Black Ink clan. On a battlefield where he could die at any time, he might even be able to perceive the opportunity to advance to the 7th Order Open Heaven Realm. The more he thought about it, the more restless he became. He was tempted to rush into the battlefield and experience the battle with his own body. Be that as it may, it was not easy for him to leave this place. If he were to leave this place, there was nobody else who could save those who were corrupted by Black Ink strength. Since he had the ability, and it was unique to him, he had to take the bigger picture into account. In life, it was impossible to satisfy the desires of all parties. Those corroded by Black Ink strength continued to be escorted here by their companions to seek treatment, so Yang Kai was busy every day. One day, though, he was helping two people who came to him for help in dispelling the Black Ink strength in their bodies when he suddenly stared at the long-lasting white light and fell into deep thought. The two, who had Black Ink strength removed from their bodies, checked their condition and thanked him profusely after confirming that there were no issues with the treatment. However, his response was absent-minded, and he continued to stare fixedly at the white light in front of him. Upon seeing that, they quickly understood that he had discovered something and did not disturb him any longer. Thus, they quickly left with their companions after saying their goodbyes. Once those people had departed, Feng glanced at the white light. Then, she glanced at Yang Kai in curiosity and puzzlement. She had watched this treatment countless times by now. The same thing happened every time he finished treating the Black Ink disciples, but she had never seen any reaction from Yang Kai before. Hence, She could only wonder why he seemed to have discovered something new this time. It was just that she did not know much about purifying light, so she could not ask much. As time passed, Yang Kai's eyes suddenly brightened, and a trace of excitement and elation also appeared on his face. Feng Ying couldn't stop herself from asking him, "Did you discover something?" Martial Peak, Chapter 4958. I have an idea. Martial Ant Feng, do you know how the purifying light is produced? Yang Kai suddenly asked. Feng Ying said, no. She had been guarding him all this time, so she was present every time he activated the purifying light. However, she had only seen what was happening on the surface. She did not know anything about the inner workings of purifying light. Even when Yang Kai had taken the time to explain this matter to the Eighth Order ancestors in the main conference hall, she had remained outside and did not hear his explanation as a result. Yang Kai suddenly took out two crystals. One was yellow and the other was blue. Both crystals were the size of a fist and had distinct, sharp edges. Moreover, there was an unmistakable yin and yang element energy fluctuation coming from the yellow and blue crystals. Feng Ying raised her brow at the sight, clearly recognizing them as two fifth-order yin and yang element materials. In addition, these two materials gave her a sense of great purity. They seemed to be of better quality than most yin and yang element materials of the same order. These are the yellow and blue crystals. Yang Kai stared at the objects in his hand, seeming to be talking to himself, but also explaining to Feng Ying at the same time. They come from the chaotic, dead territory. Stunned, Feng Ying soon yelled in surprise. The chaotic, dead territory? Which chaotic, dead territory? Yang Kai laughed. Are you implying that there's a second chaotic, dead territory in this universe? You're right, Martial Ant. It's the chaotic, dead territory where the burning light and serene glimmer are located. Feng Ying was flabbergasted. On the other hand, Yang Kai waved his hand and said, it is rumored that the burning light and serene glimmer are brutal and extremely dangerous. While there is some truth to that, the rumors are somewhat exaggerated. I spent some time in the chaotic dead territory and interacted with these two beings before. Interacted with them before. Feng Ying was confused and could barely believe what he was saying. A black ink clansman once appeared in the 3,000 worlds. Elites from all the cave heavens and paradises had to be dispatched just to suppress the chaos. Unfortunately, many people were corroded by black ink strength and were converted into black ink disciples because of this incident. In the end, I went to the chaotic dead territory to seek help. The burning light and serene glimmer were the ones who gave me these two marks. She asked, the ones on the backs of your hands. During this period, two distinct marks would appear on the backs of Yang Kai's hands every time he activated purifying light. Naturally, that had not escaped Feng Ying's notice. She had not understood the mystery and heritage hidden in the marks, but she immediately realized after listening to his explanation. Exactly. He nodded. With these two marks as the foundation, I can channel the powers of those two beings that are contained within these yellow and blue crystals. When yin and yang converge, the purifying light is produced. Feng Ying seemed to have an epiphany. In other words, you need to consume these yellow and blue crystals whenever you use purifying light. That's right. Yang Kai looked at the objects in his hand. Purifying light consumes these two objects when cast. His words immediately made her anxious. How many of these crystals do you have on hand? Yang Kai laughed. Martial Ant, are you worried that I will run out of these yellow and blue crystals? Aren't you worried? Even the cleverest woman could not cook a meal without rice. Nobody would be able to purify and dispel the black ink strength if Yang Kai ran out. It's useless to worry. Besides, I have a lot of these on hand. They will not be used up in such a short time. Yang Kai had made an astronomical fortune back in the chaotic dead territory. Even he did not know how many yellow and blue crystals he had received. The amount was so large that it was practically innumerable. What's more, there were countless piles of these crystals stacked up like mountains in his small universe. How could he run out of them in such a short time? Although he had split his collection in half and given one part to High Heaven Palace before his departure, he still had literal mountains of them in his possession. The yellow and blue crystals consumed during this period were nothing but a drop in the ocean for him. After listening to what he said, Fengling relaxed considerably. Even so, she admonished him lightly. We need to plan for that eventuality in advance. Have you tried using other yin and yang element materials to replace the yellow and blue crystals? I tried, but it didn't work. Purifying light has to be cast with the yellow and blue crystals that come from the burning light and serene glimmer. While speaking, Yang Kai waved his hand dismissively and continued. I didn't bring this up to discuss this matter with you, Martial Ant. Rather, I've always felt that the purifying light left over from purifying black ink strength within those I've treated goes to waste because there are no other immediate uses for it. Fengling nodded lightly. This situation had not escaped her notice. That was indeed the case. Every time someone infected came over, Yang Kai would use purifying light to dispel the black ink strength from them. However, the remaining white light would linger for a time before dissipating. In the past, she had thought that the ability came from Yang Kai himself and was not too concerned. But now that she knew the purifying light consumed yellow and blue crystals, she immediately felt a twinge of pain in her heart. The purifying light that had been wasted was still an invaluable treasure that could dispel more black ink strength if it could only be preserved somehow. What do you want to do? She asked. Is there a way to prevent this wastage? I have an idea, but I don't know if it can be realized. He put the yellow and blue crystals away. Strictly speaking, the purifying light is just another form of energy. Since it is a type of energy, do you think it can be stored? Stored? She furrowed her eyebrows slightly. For example, with the help of a grand array. If we can achieve this, then there will be no need to worry about waste in the future. Yang Kai continued slowly. I have quite a few yellow and blue crystals in my possession. Nevertheless, it is better to plan ahead for the long term since we are on the black ink battlefield. We should save wherever we can. In that way, more people can receive treatment in the future. Her eyes brightened at those words. It's exactly as you said. Unfortunately, I don't know anything about the Tao of Spirit Arrays. You will have to consult others regarding this matter. Many thanks, Martial Ant. Yang Kai cupped his fist and bowed. Fengling pondered for a while before saying, Wait a moment. I will summon some people over. While saying that, she took out a communication artifact and sent out a few messages. Zhong Liang had already granted her the right to mobilize the people within the inner sanctum so that she could better protect and cooperate with Yang Kai. Hence, there were no issues with her current actions. Less than an hour later, an elderly man with a long sword descended from the sky. He greeted Fengling after he landed and studied Yang Kai with great interest. Fengling introduced them. Yang Kai, this is Senior Brother Fan Sun from Emo Sha Heaven. Yang Kai bowed. Greetings, Martial Uncle Fan. Fan Sun stretched out his hand and laughed loudly. No need to be polite. I have heard a lot about you, so I've been wanting to meet you all this while. Unfortunately, the ongoing war makes it difficult for me to leave my post without permission. Now that I see you today, I can see that you really are a talented young man. There was no doubt that Yang Kai was currently the most popular person in Blue Sky Pass. Quite some time had passed since his arrival, and at this point, almost every cave heaven or paradise guarding Blue Sky Pass had a disciple who was rescued by Yang Kai. There was no saying how many people were indebted to him by now. Those who had not been corroded by the black ink strength were naturally curious about these mystical means that suddenly appeared in Blue Sky Pass. The human race had been deeply troubled by the black ink strength for countless years because there had been no method to dispel it. Therefore, Yang Kai's arrival had undoubtedly brought a solution to this age-old problem. Who would not be curious about such a person and their means? That was also why Fan Sun behaved so politely. Things on the battlefield could change at a moment's notice, and he could not guarantee that he would not be invaded by black ink strength one day. So, even though he was a 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master, he did not put on airs around Yang Kai. There was no saying whether he would need Yang Kai's help in the future, so how could he act arrogantly now? You praise me too much, Martial Uncle Fan, Yang Kai responded humbly. Fengling said, within the inner sanctum, in the 7th Order, Senior Brother Fan can be ranked among the top 3 in terms of his mastery in the Tao of Spirit Arrays. Fan Sun smiled and waved his hand dismissively. Everybody has their talents. If your words spread to the public, junior sister, I will not be able to hold my head up anymore. His expression turned solemn. Why did you summon me, junior sister? Feng said, Yang Kai is the one who has something to discuss with you. But don't be in such a rush. I also summoned a few others, so let's wait for them to arrive before we talk about that. Doing that would allow them to save some energy from repeating themselves over and over again. Besides, it would be better to explain things in one go after everybody had gathered. Fan Sun nodded. With the goal of promoting a good relationship with Yang Kai, he spent the time chatting with him. While they were waiting, a cultivator who was corroded by black ink strength happened to arrive seeking help. Fan Sun witnessed Yang Kai casting the purifying light with his own eyes. The sight of the pure white light shrouding the cultivator and dispelling the black ink strength amazed him greatly. For people arrived in quick succession after a short wait. All of them were proficient in the Tao of Spirit arrays. Their cultivations might vary, but even the lowest among them was in the 6th order open heaven realm. These people would be known as grandmasters wherever they went. According to Yang Kai's own system of classification for the Tao, all of them had reached the 6th level, exceeding the ordinary to reach the extraordinary in the Tao of Spirit arrays, at the very least. It had to be said that Yang Kai himself was only at this level in his Tao of Time. Such talented people would not face the Black Ink Clan's offensive directly on the battlefield and were generally stationed inside the barrier Grand Array of Blue Sky Pass, ready to repair and maintain the operation of all the Grand Arrays at any time. As long as the enemies did not invade Blue Sky Pass, they usually would not face any danger. Feng introduced everybody to Yang Kai. Yang Kai memorized their details and greeted them in turn. Like Fan Sun, the people who came were very friendly towards Yang Kai. It was only then that Yang Kai revealed his purpose of inviting them over. In order to show them what they needed to do, he deliberately cast the purifying light in front of them. After witnessing the purifying light, Fan Sun seemed pensive. That is a great idea, Marshal Nephew. If we can achieve that, it will certainly be possible to save on some materials for later use. The others nodded in agreement. Fan Sun looked at the others. If that's the case, why don't we discuss how we should proceed with this matter? The others naturally had no objections. They immediately gathered together and communicated with each other through their surging divine senses. During this period, some of them even demonstrated various spirit arrays in an attempt to come up with a feasible solution. Yang Kai and Feng remained idle by the side. They both knew nothing about the Tao of Spirit arrays, so they could not provide any input. In fact, they didn't even understand what these people were doing most of the time. Several days passed in a similar fashion before the Spirit Array Grandmasters took action. In quick order, they set out various array boards and installed various array banners everywhere. Their movements were so smooth and skillful that the people watching could only gape in amazement. It didn't take long for them to finish setting up a new grand array. Fan Sun looked at Yang Kai. Would you like to test out the Spirit Array, Marshal Nephew? I would indeed. Yang Kai nodded and asked, what is this Spirit Array? Fan Sun smiled. This Spirit Array was specially researched and developed for this matter. It has the effect of sealing and storing energy. As for the name, we have yet to decide. Yang Kai raised his brow slightly. These Spirit Array Grandmasters had managed to create a brand new Spirit Array after discussing with each other for just a few days. It could be seen that their achievements in the Tao of Spirit Arrays were very high. Yang Kai stepped into the center of the Grand Array and stood still. Then, Fan Sun made a gesture with one hand, gently waved the array banner with his other hand, and shouted, Rise! A transparent light barrier immediately rose up from the ground and closed around Yang Kai. Martial Peak, Chapter 4959, Sealing Array. Inside the nameless Grand Array, Yang Kai extended his divine sense to investigate his surroundings. He could not understand the workings of the Grand Array, but he knew it had been specially researched and developed for this purpose, so it certainly contained a sealing effect. As for whether it was effective, he would know once he tested it out. He immediately cast the purifying light. Of course, he did not use any yellow and blue crystals of a high order. He only used 5th order ones, just in case the experiment failed and they went to waste. A small ball of white light that resembled a small sun suddenly appeared above his hand the next moment. Under his control, the white light remained condensed in the palm of his hand without scattering or dispersing. It was extremely dazzling. Everybody watched intently as Yang Kai tossed the ball of white light that resembled a small sun into the air. The white light instantly filled the entire grand array, but was blocked from escaping and sealed within its boundaries by the light barrier. Afterwards, Yang Kai waited quietly to see whether the grand array could keep the purifying light sealed for an extended time. This was a factor that would affect the next series of plans that he wished to implement, so he could not be negligent. He had to make sure that his plans were feasible. To that end, his divine sense monitored the changes in the white light at all times. Outside the grand array, Feng Ying and others were also paying close attention to the situation. It was just that the entire grand array was filled with blinding white light, causing Yang Kai's figure that was shrouded within the veil to become a little hazy when viewed from the outside. Yang Kai gradually revealed a happy expression as more time passed, having discovered that his previous speculations were correct. The purifying light was a unique and profound kind of energy, but at its root it was energy nonetheless. Since it was a type of energy, then it could be sealed and stored away. In that aspect, the spirit array created by Fan Sun and the others had already achieved this goal. The purifying light had been sealed within the confines of the grand array. Therefore, it could neither dissipate into nothingness, reduce in amount, nor become defective in any way. Moreover, it could be maintained for a long period of time. In this way, as long as the human cultivators corroded by black ink strength were guided into the grand array, the excess purifying light that remained after the black ink strength in their bodies was dispelled would no longer be wasted. Little by little, the many grains of sand would eventually build a tower. The existence of the grand array would undoubtedly decrease the consumption of the yellow and blue crystals to a great extent in the long run. "Martial Uncle Fan, that's enough," Yang Kai said. Upon hearing that, Fan Sun, who was controlling the grand array from the outside, immediately formed a set of hand seals, and the light barrier of the grand array cracked open slightly. However, a portion of the purifying light inside the grand array escaped outside before Yang Kai could leave the grand array. Fan Sun resealed the light barrier as soon as Yang Kai left its range, but it was obvious that the amount of purifying light inside the grand array had decreased. Yang Kai looked back, and the look of joy on his face faded from his face. His brow furrowed tightly together instead. He had forgotten that while the grand array had an excellent sealing effect and could easily contain the purifying light, a portal would open whenever someone needed to enter or exit, allowing the purifying light contained inside to flow out. The losses accumulated from opening the portal once or twice might not be significant, but what about tens or hundreds of times? It had to be said that if this plan could be realized, then every cultivator who was corroded by black ink strength would have to enter and exit the grand array. In that way, the entry and exit of a single person would cause some amount of purifying light to be lost twice. That would be far too much waste unless they could keep the grand array sealed at all times. But if the grand array was sealed at all times, then those who were corrupted by black ink strength would not be able to enter. This was a difficult problem, and it was obvious that Fan Sun and others had also discovered this issue. All of them were frowning deeply at this moment. Yang Kai looked at Fan Sun. "Is there a way to improve the grand array, Martial Uncle Fan?" Fan Sun pondered for a while before he made a suggestion. "We might be able to add a gathering effect, which may stem the loss." The others nodded lightly, with one of them agreeing, "That sounds reasonable." "Then, I shall have to trouble you." The Spirit Array Grandmasters immediately got to work. They were planning to add an additional effect to the foundation of the original Spirit Array. Unfortunately, it was not as simple as adding one Spirit Array onto another. Each Spirit Array was intricately constructed, so adding an entirely new effect onto an existing array was by no means easy. The slightest change would affect everything else. That was why great changes had to be made to the Grand Array in order to add the gathering effect. They needed to make sure that the Grand Array not only operated perfectly, but also achieved the desired effects. Fan Sun and the others gathered to the side, busy as bees. From time to time, they would set up numerous array banners. At other times, they would gather together and hold a deep discussion. There were times when they even quarreled until they were red in the face due to various disagreements. Unable to help them, Yang Kai could only wait by the side. Those corrupted by black ink strength would occasionally come to him for help during this period. Needless to say, he swiftly dispelled and purified the black ink strength in their bodies. Those who came to seek treatment had no idea what Fan Sun and the others were doing, but most of the time, they would leave immediately after receiving treatment from Yang Kai and return to the battlefield to fight the Black Ink Clan. This battle would continue until the Black Ink Clan withdrew their forces. Only then would the current war finally come to an end. Several days passed in the same manner before a brand new grand array took shape. Fan Sun and others might have profound cultivation in this field, but even they were exhausted. Their exhaustion did not come from physical exertion, though, but rather psychological exhaustion. Everybody knew that Yang Kai's request was extremely important, so they had given their all to fulfill his request. The mental burden bearing down on them was very exhausting. Just like before, Yang Kai stood in the middle of the grand array and cast the purifying light. The purifying light was allowed to flood the entire grand array as an experiment. The sealing effect of the grand array remained the same as before, so there were no problems in that aspect. The purifying light was perfectly sealed inside the grand array. However, the same situation repeated once more when the grand array was opened. A small amount of the purifying light escaped when Yang Kai walked out of the grand array's boundary. The amount that escaped might have lessened considerably compared to the first attempt, but it was obvious that the gathering effect could not achieve the desired result entirely. The purifying light was the only way to treat those invaded by black ink strength. Moreover, this ability consumed two unique materials known as the yellow crystals and blue crystals. These materials only come from the burning light and serene glimmer in the chaotic dead territory, so they could not be found on the black ink battlefield. In other words, if Yang Kai exhausted his supply of yellow and blue crystals, the human race would once again fall into a situation where they were powerless against the black ink strength. That was something nobody wanted to see. The trace amounts of purifying light that were wasted today might have been the last rays of hope for one of the corrupted at some point in the future. With those thoughts in mind, how could Fan Sun and the others dare to be careless? They all felt as though there was a heavy burden pressing down on their shoulders. The second experiment had undoubtedly ended in failure once more. Nevertheless, the Spirit Array Grandmasters gathered together again to learn from their previous experience and improve upon their solution. For the next 2 months, the Spirit Array Grandmasters would come up with brand new solutions and prepare a different Grand Array every few days. Be that as it may, the results of each experiment were unsatisfactory. They were unable to solve the issue of the purifying light escaping when the Grand Array was opened, so they could not avoid the wastage caused when people entered or exited. After just a short span of 2 months, all the Spirit Array Grandmasters had bloodshot eyes. For them, their inability to answer Yang Kai's request was an indication of their lack of skill and their shortcomings in the Tao of Spirit Arrays. How could these people, who had always been proud of their ability, accept such a reality? They were the top figures who represented the Tao of Spirit Arrays in the major cave heavens and paradises. There were only a handful of people in the world who could surpass their achievements in the Tao of Spirit Arrays. Therefore, they secretly vowed to develop a grand array that could solve this problem perfectly. Following another failed experiment, they did not become discouraged. On the contrary, they seemed to become even more enthusiastic than before. It felt as though they had gone back to the time when they were young and learning as apprentices. Back then, they had yet to make great achievements in the Tao of Spirit Arrays. Despite facing all sorts of challenges, they had always figured out a solution to their troubles. The joy they would experience in their heart every time they solved a difficult problem was indescribable. They were looking forward to the day they would experience that feeling again. On the other hand, Yang Kai was worried about this group's mental condition. It was obvious that something was wrong with these Spirit Array Grandmasters. They were putting in special effort and competing against their very own selves. Although there were times when being persistent was a good thing, there were times when they could fall into an obsessive state instead. During this period of time, Yang Kai had also formed a vague idea in his heart. It was just that he had been too embarrassed to mention his idea in front of them, lest he be suspected of trying to show off meager skills before an expert. But at this moment, he could not remain silent any longer. At the very least, he would be able to provide them with a different perspective. Martial Uncle Fan, what do you think of this idea? If we set up a space array inside the grand array, then we can use the space array to come and go freely. In that way, there will be no need to open the grand array at all. If they did not open the grand array, then no wastage caused by the loss of the purifying light would occur. A space array? Fan Sun raised his brow at those words. His bloodshot eyes that were staring fixedly at Yang Kai gradually brightened. That's right. A space array. Why didn't I think of that? Similarly, the others also looked speechless and ashamed of themselves. How could they fail to realize such a simple thing until Yang Kai reminded them? Feng Ying secretly found the scene amusing from where she watched them by the side. She knew that these spirit array grandmasters had fallen into a spiral and were looking at things from the wrong direction. They had been constantly obsessing over creating the perfect grand array. So how could they even think about a completely different solution to the issue? There were times when overly complicated thoughts were not a good thing. It could be said that Yang Kai had brought them back to their senses with a single sentence. Fan Sun and others immediately cheered up and began working on preparing another grand array. With several spirit array grandmasters joining forces, it was only natural that a small space array would not be difficult for them. In less than a day, there was an additional space array inside the ceiling array. The space array was useless on its own. Therefore, they prepared another space array at a place not far away from the grand array so that both space arrays could resonate with each other. When both space arrays were ready, Fan Sun suddenly spoke up with a troubled expression. Yang Kai, this old master suddenly realized a problem. Please elaborate, Martial Uncle Fan. In order to ensure that the purifying light does not go to waste, we worked very hard on the ceiling array. The ceiling effect is absolutely extraordinary as a result. To put it bluntly, the area covered by the grand array is completely isolated from the outside world. In other words, the two space arrays will not be able to connect with each other when the ceiling array is in operation. Fan Sun blushed slightly while speaking. The other spirit array grandmasters also revealed expressions of realization at that moment. Meanwhile, Yang Kai was stunned by those words. When he finally recovered from his shock, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was truly a huge blunder. He had merely been expressing his thoughts when he suggested using a space array. Unfortunately, it would now seem that his efforts had been for naught. Thanks to the ceiling array, the space within was completely isolated from the outside world. The connection between both space arrays would naturally be cut off as a result, so it was impossible to transport something from the outside into the inside via the space array. Of course, it might not be completely impossible. I might be able to make some adjustments. When the space array is activated, the ceiling array will activate at the same time to open a small portal. In that way, the two space arrays will be able to connect with each other. But I cannot guarantee that the purifying light will not be lost by doing that. Martial Peak, Chapter 4960, Donghua and Ping. Whether or not the purifying light will be lost, we will know once we test it out. Now that things had come to this, they had to explore every single possibility that came to mind. Fan Sun and others got to work again tinkering with the grand array. Another 2 days passed before they finally completed their preparations. As before, Yang Kai walked into the grand array and Fan Sun formed a hand seal to activate the ceiling array. After that, Yang Kai cast purifying light. Looking at the pure white, flawless light, Fan Sun and the others couldn't help feeling a deep sense of pain and remorse. Over the past few months, their experiments had failed over and over again, resulting in them wasting quite a lot of the purifying light. These incidents had been eating away at their confidence, and they were starting to harbor great doubts about the craft they had honed over all these years. Both the space arrays had been inspected before the ceiling array was activated, and it was confirmed that they were in working order. Now that the grand array had been activated, Yang Kai stood on the space array and tried to activate it, but sure enough, his attempt failed. It was just as Fan Sun claimed. They had poured massive effort into preparing the ceiling array to isolate the inside from the outside. In other words, the space inside the ceiling array could not connect with the outside world. Forget the two space arrays. Even if Yang Kai wanted to perform instantaneous movement on his own, he could not escape from the confines of the spirit array without destroying the grand array first. Yang Kai, are you ready? Fan Sun shouted. Yang Kai replied, yes. Martial Uncle Fan, please begin. Fan Sun nodded lightly and changed his hand seal. With a slight wave of the array banner, the grand array underwent some subtle changes. Outside the grand array, everybody watched intently without even blinking. In the next moment, obvious fluctuations of space principles came from within the grand array, emanating from Yang Kai. Everyone quickly turned to look to the side. Sure enough, Yang Kai's figure suddenly appeared on the other space array. Unfortunately, some of the pure white light emerged along with him. The light lingered around his body and quickly dissipated into the surroundings. There was no doubt that the white light was the purifying light that was originally sealed inside the grand array. When the two space arrays connected with each other, Yang Kai was not the only thing to be transported out of the grand array. The purifying light had also escaped along the passage established by the space array. Fan Sun frowned deeply. This outcome was both unexpected and expected. Therefore, he couldn't help feeling extremely helpless. On the other hand, Yang Kai sighed softly. Even the space array could not solve their current conundrum. At this rate, he truly did not know how to solve this problem anymore. The failure this time had also affected him to a certain degree. That was because this matter was highly related to him. If they were unable to resolve this issue, the wastage of the purifying light was a secondary problem. More importantly, his future prospects would not be bright either. He was just about to console Fan Sun and the others so that they could think of other solutions when he heard Feng Ying's voice, Martial Uncle Donghua. Everybody quickly turned to look in Feng Ying's direction, only to see her bowing in a certain direction in the sky. They followed her gaze and saw a burly middle-aged man suspended in midair. He was quietly looking down at the situation below him. Fan Sun and others hurriedly bowed in greeting, and Yang Kai followed suit. Yang Kai did not recognize the person who came. Although he had met most of the Eighth Order Masters in Blue Sky Passback at the main conference hall, a few of them had not shown up for that meeting. Feng Ying had explained that it was impossible for Zhong Liang to summon all the Eighth Order Masters to the main conference hall at once. After all, somebody needed to oversee the battlefield. Martial Uncle Donghua was clearly one of those people. Having said that, Yang Kai had seen this person passing by several times recently even though he did not recognize him. Every single time, Martial Uncle Donghua would fly overhead with a group of people following behind him. He was always in a rush and seemed to constantly be busy. Yang Kai had noticed him looking down curiously on several occasions, but he was most likely in too much of a hurry to come over and investigate the situation. It would seem that he had some time on his hands today. There was no saying how long he had been watching the situation. After all, everybody had been so focused on testing the effects of the space array that they did not notice his arrival. Martial Uncle Donghua walked over, as though there were invisible steps leading downward under his feet. He turned to look at the ceiling array, then he turned to glance at Yang Kai. After a brief scan, he smiled and nodded at Yang Kai. Even though Yang Kai did not know him, he knew about Yang Kai. He knew that there was a person who could purify and dispel black ink strength in the central square. That person had helped countless resolve their crisis over the past few months. Many people he knew had also benefited from this person. That was why he had always paid attention to the situation every time he passed by this place. Feng Ying knew that Yang Kai was not familiar with Blue Sky Pass and did not recognize the person in front of them, so she took the initiative to explain. This is Martial Uncle Donghua and Ping of Divine Cauldron Cave Heaven. Divine Cauldron Cave Heaven. Yang Kai raised his brow at the name and recalled the little fatty, Su Zhan. Speaking of which, he had not seen the little fatty again after they parted at the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Su Zhan was a core disciple of Divine Cauldron Cave Heaven after all. Not to mention, he had received the favor of a divine spirit while he was training in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary and grew tremendously as a result. It was rumored that Su Zhan had successfully advanced into the Sixth Order Open Heaven realm a long time ago. Greetings, Martial Uncle Donghua. Yang Kai bowed once more. Donghua and Ping nodded and said, "No need to be so polite. I've heard about you for some time now. Although I've passed by a few times, I've always been busy with work and could not make the time to come down. It so happened that I had some free time when I passed by today, so I came to take a look. Feng explained, every time the Black Ink clan attacks, the people from Divine Cauldron Cave Heaven are the busiest. If the warships on the battlefield are damaged, they will require many artifact refiners to repair and replace them. The fellow brothers of Divine Cauldron Heaven are proficient in the Tao of artifact refining, so this task is naturally entrusted to them. Yang Kai was stunned when he heard those words. It was not until this moment that he understood the reason why he kept seeing Martial Uncle running around recently. It turned out that Donghua and Ping had been going around repairing the damaged warships. Since Divine Cauldron Heaven was famous for artifact refining, it was only natural that they were also capable of this. It could even be said that most of the warships at the Great Passes were produced by Divine Cauldron Heaven disciples. They were considered extremely precious talents, similar to array masters like Fan Son. Such talented individuals would never be allowed to carelessly set foot on the battlefield, lest they were killed or corrupted by Black Ink strength and became Black Ink disciples. On the contrary, they gave those at the front strong support from the rear. "What are you doing here?" Donghua and Ping asked with a glance at the ceiling array. Having passed by this place on several occasions, he had a vague idea about what they were up to, but he was not sure if the situation was the same as what he was thinking. It was precisely because he had some speculations on the matter that he deliberately took the time to stop and watch for a while today. Feng quickly explained what they had been working on for the past few months and the challenges that they were facing at the moment. The person in front of her was not just an 8th Order Master, but also a division commander. Even if he would not easily set foot on the battlefield, Donghua and Ping had the qualifications to intervene in such matters. Besides, she did not wish to conceal anything from him. Donghua and Ping nodded after listening to her explanation. "So that's how it is." Then, he suddenly suggested something. Since the Tao of Spirit Arrays is unable to perfectly prevent the wastage of the purifying light, have you considered using the Tao of Artifact Refining? Fan Sun was taken aback. The Tao of Artifact Refining? They were all Spirit Array Grandmasters, so when encountering problems, it was only natural that they tried to solve them from the perspective of Spirit Arrays. Why would they consider using the Tao of Artifact Refining? The Tao of Artifact Refining, Yang Kai murmured. His eyes lit up a moment later, and he rubbed his palms together. Right? How could I have forgotten about that? There were times when one might not see the light at the end of the tunnel. On the contrary, the road ahead might end in a steep hanging cliff. He had been working together with Fan Sun and others throughout this period of time, so he had been influenced by them and only considered the problem from the perspective of the Tao of Spirit Arrays. He had totally forgotten about the Tao of Artifact Refining. Back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, the little fatty, Su Zhan, had helped him to refine the Yuan Magnetic Divine Bottle Gourd, which sealed and contained a large amount of Yuan Magnetic Divine Light. In the past, Yang Kai had borrowed the strength of the Yuan Magnetic Divine Bottle Gourd to repel many powerful enemies. Strictly speaking, the Yuan Magnetic Divine Light and the Purifying Light were essentially the same. Both were a kind of energy. Although they had different effects, there was no denying that both were a form of light. If the Yuan Magnetic Divine Bottle Gourd could seal the Yuan Magnetic Divine Light, then it could also seal the Purifying Light. In his excitement, Yang Kai took out the empty Yuan Magnetic Divine Bottle Gourd and handed the object to Donghua and Ping. "Senior, please take a look at this." Donghua and Ping took the Yuan Magnetic Divine Bottle Gourd and immediately raised his eyebrows in surprise. This object contains traces of Divine Cauldron Heaven's techniques, but which lousy brat has such poor skills to refine something like this? Yang Kai was instantly ashamed. When the Yuan Magnetic Divine Bottle Gourd was first refined, Su Zhan had yet to advance to the open heaven realm. In fact, he had only just condensed his Tao seal. Su Zhan had been in the process of accumulation, so his cultivation was not that high. Although he had received instruction from Divine Cauldron Heaven, in the eyes of artifact refining grandmasters like Donghua and Ping, Su Zhan's methods were indeed clumsy and crude. The Yuan Magnetic Divine Bottle Gourd no longer contained Yuan Magnetic Divine Light. Back then, Voidland had been in desperate need of cultivation materials, and the Yuan magnetic divine light was a metal element material. Moreover, it was a sixth-order material. For that reason, Yang Kai had used the Yuan magnetic divine light as a cultivation material for the disciples to refine. This bottle gourd is interesting at least. Dongguo and Ping carefully examined the bottle gourd. This gourd is born of the world, right? Yang Kai revealed a look of admiration. Senior certainly has sharp eyes. Dongguo and Ping asked thoughtfully, do you want me to refine something similar to seal the purifying light? In that way, even without you, others will be able to help dispel and purify black ink strength. Yang Kai shook his head. That's not the case. Although doing so is feasible, that will only increase the wastage of the purifying light. Senior, this junior was hoping to ask you to create an artifact that can satisfy the effect of sealing the purifying light, avoid any wastage, and even facilitate the entry and exit of personnel. Can that be done? Dongguo and Ping held the Yuan magnetic divine bottle gourd and furrowed his brow in thought. Everybody else watched him intently. A long while passed before he finally nodded and said, it can be done. Yang Kai was overjoyed. Are you serious? As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized that his words were inappropriate and quickly explained, please forgive me, Senior. It's not that this junior is not willing to believe you. It's just that this matter is extremely important, so we have to be extra careful. Dongguo and Ping smiled and said, it's fine. I understand your feelings. But, since this old master said that it can be done, then it can be done. The war is raging fiercely recently, so I might be quite busy. Let's do this. I will make some time to refine this artifact for you. The shortest will take 1 month while the longest will take 3 months to complete. While saying that, he tossed the Yuan magnetic divine bottle gourd back to Yang Kai. Yang Kai exhaled slowly and cupped his fist. Many thanks, Martial Uncle. Dongguo and Ping waved his hand dismissively. It's all for the sake of our people. We are just doing our respective duties. Then, he glanced at Fan Sun and the others. Come with me. The sealing array will be needed. When that time comes, I will need your help. Naturally, there was no reason for Fan Sun and the others to object. Martial Peak, Chapter 4961, The Capital to Crusade. Time flew by quickly, and 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. The war had gotten more and more intense during this period. Although the Black Ink clan had suffered countless casualties, a steady stream of reinforcements continued to arrive from the rear as though their numbers were infinite. On the other hand, the human race relied on Blue Sky Pass's sturdy defenses in order to repel the Black Ink clan's repeated onslaught. There were not many casualties on their end. Blue Sky Pass itself was an enormous mobile palace artifact, so it had its own defensive mechanisms. Furthermore, warships and masters were frequently sent into battle to break through and disrupt enemy lines. As long as the Blue Sky Pass and the various warships remained intact, the lives of those hiding inside would not be endangered. Be that as it may, the number of people who were corroded by Black Ink strength every single day remained very high. Knowing that they now had the means to dispel and purify Black Ink strength, the human masters no longer had any scruples when fighting the Black Ink clan. If they had the chance to kill an enemy, they would not pass up on the opportunity, even if they would be corroded by Black Ink strength as a result. In the beginning, the Black Ink clan had been happy to see these changes. That was because many Black Ink disciples corrupted by Black Ink strength would voluntarily defect to their side every time the human race and the Black Ink clan clashed. Contrary to their expectations, though, they were surprised to discover that not a single Black Ink disciple was born from the human race after a certain point in time. This phenomenon was extremely unusual, and this matter soon attracted the attention of the higher-ups in the Black Ink clan. They tried to learn more about this phenomenon, but were powerless to do anything about the situation. In the central square of Blue Sky Pass, Yang Kai cast purifying light to help those infected dispel and purify the Black Ink strength in their bodies. All of a sudden, he heard the sound of something traveling through the air at a high speed. It did not sound like the arrival of another infected person, though. Thus, he took a moment out of his busy schedule to glance in that direction and was promptly astonished by the sight. Over there was a ship which by no means could be called small. Judging by its appearance, The ship did not seem to be a simple flight-type artifact, but a warship. Yang Kai had seen many of the warships belonging to the human race during the time he spent on the battlefield previously. While there were various shapes and sizes to them, the vast majority of them seemed to adopt the appearance of a large ship. There were evident traces of an assault marring the surface of this particular warship, so it was clear it had seen action on the battlefield. Nevertheless, what surprised Yang Kai was the people standing on the deck of the ship. They were none other than Dongguan Ping, Fan Sun, and the others. As soon as he saw them, Yang Kai became excited and hurriedly finished the tasks he had on hand. Only then did he soar into the sky and land on the deck of the large ship. After greeting Dongguan Ping and the others, he examined the large ship with interest. Dongguan Ping smiled. This old girl was taken out of the storehouse. Since you needed a finished product in a hurry, there was no time to refine a new one. The other functional warships are already in use by others, so although this one was badly damaged in the past, it has been patched up since then. You can use it with peace of mind. Yang Kai nodded and asked suspiciously, "Does it work?" Dongguan Ping laughed. "Whether it can be used or not, you will know once you've tested it out. Since you wanted to seal the purifying light while also having a convenient method for entry and exit, this was the only solution that I could come up with." Fan Sun and the others also made many modifications during this period before they finalized the design. "We brought this here for you to make the final verification. Come, follow me." While saying that, he beckoned and guided Yang Kai towards the cabin inside. Upon entering the cabin, Yang Kai discovered that ship's interior had undergone a lot of changes. The entire hull had basically been hollowed out, so the entire cabin was nothing more than a huge empty space. The surrounding walls of the cabin were engraved with complex patterns, and a space array had also been prepared in the center of the cabin. Dongguan Ping explained, "Those who were corrupted by black ink strength can be teleported into this room via the space array on the deck. In addition, they can be teleported out in the same manner after the black ink strength has been dispelled from their bodies." Yang Kai nodded. "Your arrangements are very thorough, Senior." Dongguan Ping waved his hands dismissively. That was Fan Sun's suggestion. He claimed that you have tried implementing this method in the past. If this method becomes feasible, then it will certainly be inconvenient to constantly open and close the Grand Array. To prevent any wastage of the purifying light, the existence of the space array is necessary. I also heard from Fan Sun that you've been experimenting for several months but have failed to solve this problem. In any case, this should be enough to satisfy your requirements. I've refined the interior of the large ship specifically for that purpose. On the other hand, Fan Sun and the others have supplemented the rest with the Tao of Spirit arrays. You can think of this cabin as a space similar to the interior of your bottle gourd. It has a strong gathering and sealing effect. Even if an occasional connection is formed between the space arrays, the purifying light sealed in this place will not escape. After he finished his explanation, he turned to look at Yang Kai. "Do you want to test it?"
Yes.
Yang Kai nodded. The space in the cabin was rather spacious. If he wanted to perform an experiment on its effectiveness, he would need to fill it with a large amount of purifying light to check its effects. That was why he drew upon the energy from a huge number of yellow and blue crystals all at once. At that moment, an extremely blinding white light bloomed in his hand and illuminated the entire cabin. The space inside the cabin was so huge that the purifying light seemed weak and scattered in comparison. Hence, Yang Kai cast purifying light several more times in succession so that it would become a little denser. After careful inspection, he confirmed that the purifying light showed no signs of escaping. The purifying light was perfectly sealed inside this cabin, allowing Yang Kai to breathe a sigh of relief. It could be said that they had taken the first step forward. However, even when he was experimenting with Fan Sun and the others, there were no issues during the first step. Their troubles only came in the next step. If they could not resolve the issue of wastage caused whenever somebody entered or exited the Grand Array, then this matter could not be considered to be completely solved. Therefore, he couldn't help feeling slightly nervous. This matter was simply far too important to him. His ability to cast purifying light to dispel black ink strength had certainly brought great fortune to the human army in Blue Sky Pass, but at the same time, he was constrained by his ability. Due to his ability, Yang Kai had to remain inside Blue Sky Pass at all times. It was impossible for him to go anywhere else. The reason he had been so enthusiastic about solving this issue during this period was so that he could regain some of his freedom. The problem of reducing the purifying light's wastage was secondary. Yang Kai stepped onto the space array, breathed out lightly, and immediately manipulated space principles. The world spun around him and his vision blurred for a moment. Then he appeared on the ship's deck. Fan Sun, Feng Ying, and the others had been waiting above while paying close attention to the movements of the space array. As soon as they saw Yang Kai appear, they carefully observed the space array with solemn expressions. "How is it?" Yang Kai anxiously asked. Although he had not felt the loss of the purifying light when he was transported out of the cabin, it was better to ask the outside observers about such matters. Fan Sun stroked his beard and said, "It worked. I didn't see any signs indicating that the purifying light had escaped." "Really?" Yang Kai raised his brow in surprise. Feng Ying nodded as well. There was none. Come. You should all come and give it a try then." Yang Kai gave up his spot. Feng Ying and the others did not refuse. They immediately took turns using the space array and teleported themselves into the cabin. A short while later, they used the same method and returned to the deck from inside the cabin. Meanwhile, Yang Kai watched them intently. His divine sense inspected the movements of every single person entering and exiting the grand array. In the end, he found that there were indeed no signs of the purifying light leaking. He rejoiced, knowing that his goal had been accomplished. Nevertheless, he couldn't help sighing slightly. It had not been easy. Despite joining efforts with Fan Sun and the others for several months, they had failed to produce satisfactory results. On the contrary, the matter was accomplished as soon as Dongguo and Ping intervened in this matter. It was not to say that the Tao of artifact refining was better than the Tao of spirit arrays. It was just that the Tao of artifact refining was simply more suitable for what he wanted to accomplish. Besides, the many spirit arrays inside the cabin were clearly constructed through a careful blending of artifact refining and spirit arrays. That was why they could produce such effects. "Many thanks for your help, Senior Dongguo." Yang Kai sincerely thanked Dongguo and Ping when the latter walked out to the deck. Dongguo and Ping waved his hand nonchalantly. "You are too polite. There's no need to be so stiff, martial nephew." He paused for a moment before he continued, "Actually, I would like to ask you for a favor." Yang Kai turned solemn. "Please speak freely, Senior." Dongguo and Ping replied, "I originally planned to create an artifact specifically for the purifying light. It was only because of your idea that I changed my mind and modified this worship instead." While he was speaking, he suddenly glanced outside the Great Pass. The human race and the Black Ink clan were fighting fiercely outside the Great Pass with every passing moment. The sounds of their battle came from afar, accompanied by the violent fluctuations that came from the collision of energies. It was obvious that the masters of both the human race and the Black Ink clan were clashing with one another. Humans have suffered from the Black Ink clan's attacks since time immemorial. The cave heavens and paradises would often send a large amount of manpower to the Black Ink battlefield at regular intervals. Countless elite disciples have died on the battlefield for this cause. Even so, we have been unable to eliminate the Black Ink clan completely. The main reason was that we were powerless to invade the Black Ink clan's domain and eradicate them once and for all. Although the old ancestor occasionally leads a team into the Black Ink clan hinterland in person, such measures are nothing more than a temporary solution. It does not strike at the root of the issue. These invasions might even incite the wrath of the Black Ink clan, provoking a stronger retaliation in return. He turned to look at Yang Kai. "The existence of Black Ink strength is a huge deterrent for us. However, your arrival and the appearance of the purifying light has greatly reduced the deterrence of the Black Ink strength and given the human race the capital to launch a crusade against the Black Ink clan. Looking at the current situation, in order to dispel Black Ink strength, those infected have to withdraw from the battlefield and come to you for treatment. But what if we deployed this ship to the battlefield instead? If someone is corrupted by Black Ink strength in battle, they will no longer need to return to the inner sanctum. On the contrary, they can quickly resolve the issue and return to the fight without delay. That will greatly preserve the manpower on the battlefield. Looking at things from a long-term perspective, if we refine more ships that contain the sealed purifying light and dispatch them along with the army, won't we be able to assault the Black Ink Clan's core and finally eradicate them completely? His words were delivered calmly, but anybody could hear the anticipation and excitement hidden in his tone. Following his speech, everybody else's eyes also began to light up with excitement. That was right. They had been fighting the Black Ink Clan for so many years, and the main reason they could not completely eradicate the Black Ink Clan was that Black Ink's strength posed too much of a danger to the human race. They were powerless to invade deep into the Black Ink Clan's domain as a result. Most of the time, they could only wait passively for the Black Ink Clan to attack. Even if they ultimately repelled the Black Ink Clan's forces, they could not eliminate the Black Ink Clan from the roots up. They could only watch the remnants of the Black Ink Clan army withdraw from the battlefield. The Black Ink Clan would slowly accumulate their strength and make another comeback after several dozen or hundreds of years. In that way, the cycle would repeat over and over again. Naturally, that was because they had no means to dispel the Black Ink's strength. Now that they had the means to do so, though, shouldn't they utilize this advantage to the fullest? When it came down to it, Dongguan Ping was an 8th Order ancestor. Standing higher allowed him to see further. While Yang Kai and the others were focused on solving the issue regarding the purifying light's wastage, he had already considered using it to launch a crusade. It was precisely due to his considerations that one of the damaged warships had been brought out from the storehouse and modified. The reason Dongguan Ping did that was so that the artifact used to seal the purifying light would not only be suitable for a crusade, but also come equipped with a strong defense. In this case, a warship in the shape of a large ship was undoubtedly the most suitable choice for such an endeavor. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4962, Capture. This matter was extremely important. Therefore, it was not something Dongguan Ping could decide on his own. They had to wait until the old ancestor fully recovered and returned from retreat before they could make a full report and plans could be made. Even if they prepared for a crusade against the Black Ink Clan, this endeavor would involve more than just Blue Sky Pass. All the Great Passes would have to contribute to the crusade. The troops from each Great Pass would need to march forward together in order to eliminate and eradicate the Black Ink Clan completely. The advanced preparations for the crusade would not be something that could be accomplished in a short time. Nevertheless, such a glorious future filled their imaginations vividly. To see whether or not this old master's idea is feasible, the battlefield around Blue Sky Pass is the perfect place to experiment. Dongguan Ping retracted his gaze. I have already contacted the 4 army commanders, so they should be arriving soon. This old master will explain this matter to them later, but the final decision on how to proceed will ultimately depend on them. In any case, we will need you to work hard when the time comes, Yang Kai. This junior will do his utmost. Yang Kai cupped his fist. When the results of the experiment came out and the application of the remodeled warship was confirmed earlier, Dongguan Ping immediately sent a message to the army commanders. For figures quickly arrived one after another before the people on the ship had even waited for a stick of incense worth of time. The Eastern Army's army commander, Ding Yao, came from Great Battle Heaven. The Southern Army's army commander, Liang Yulong, came from Crepe Myrtle Cave Heaven. The Western Army's army commander, Zhong Liang, came from Blue Sky Paradise, and the Northern Army's army commander, Shin Tu Mo, came from Azure Clouds Paradise. Every one of them was an 8th Order ancestor. Moreover, they were considered the best of the best among the 8th Order masters. The war was currently ongoing, and these 4 were in charge of guarding the east, south, west, and north directions around Blue Sky Pass respectively. Therefore, they would not carelessly leave their positions before the war ended. The last time they left their positions, it had been because Zhong Liang claimed that he had an important matter to discuss. This time around, Dongguan Ping had summoned them for another matter of great importance. It was something that required the army commanders to come forward in person. Otherwise, he would not have dared to disturb them so easily. They did not have much time, so they immediately inquired about the situation as soon as they arrived. Zhongliang was well aware of Yang Kai's recent activities. Feng Ying, who had been serving beside Yang Kai all this time, would periodically send messages to him about the situation. However, the other 3 did not know much. Upon listening to Donghua and Ping's outlook on the war in the future, their eyes involuntarily lit up with hope. If that was truly the case, then Yang Kai's arrival would not only give Blue Sky Pass the means to resolve Black Ink's strength, but also give the human race the power to launch a crusade against the Black Ink clan's domain. Such a matter was extremely important. Ding Yao was dressed in golden armor, looking absolutely imposing. All the cultivators from Great Battle Heaven generally dressed in this manner. After he entered the large ship and inspected the interior, he turned to the side and asked, "Does it work?" "It should work fine," Yang Kai nodded in response. Ding Yao frowned. "We cannot afford to be negligent in this matter. We need to take careful measures to ensure that this endeavor is feasible." While he was talking, he suddenly noticed a figure flying over at a high speed. It was a human cultivator who had been corroded by Black Ink's strength and came here to seek treatment. As soon as he saw the 4 army commanders standing there, he visibly jumped in surprise and hurriedly cupped his fist in greeting. The 4 men waved their hands dismissively, indicating that there was no need for such courtesy. Yang Kai smiled. "Whether or not it works, we will know after this." There was no need to prepare anything on his part since people would come to him for help with dispelling Black Ink strength every single day. In fact, he was waiting for this very moment in the first place. The 4 army commanders immediately understood. Nodding lightly, they waited quietly. Meanwhile, Yang Kai stepped forward and guided the cultivator corroded by Black Ink strength to the space array. Despite activating the spirit array and transporting that person into the cabin, he did not follow along. A short while later, that person came out of the cabin again. He looked slightly dazed and in shock. Although he had heard about the person in the inner sanctum who had the mysterious ability to dispel and purify Black Ink strength from his allies, those were merely rumors that he had heard. He had not experienced such miracles himself, so he did not have much understanding regarding the matter. Now that he had experienced the situation for himself, he finally understood what the word incredible meant. The Black Ink strength inside his body had been dispelled cleanly in such a short period of time. Furthermore, not the slightest trace remained. He was no longer at risk of becoming corrupted by it. On the contrary, the gentle white light in the cabin had been as comfortable as the spring breeze. This is a true lifesaver. He was extremely grateful to Yang Kai. Nevertheless, the 4 army commanders were not reassured just yet. They carefully inspected that person's small universe and confirmed that he was perfectly fine before they released him. During this interval, Yang Kai took the chance to enter the cabin and check on the loss of the purifying light. The Black Ink strength had been brought into the cabin to be dispelled and purified, so the purifying light was bound to have been consumed to a certain extent. However, the results were as expected. The loss was almost negligible. He had drawn upon the power of many yellow and blue crystals in the cabin previously, so the purifying light sealed in the cabin remained quite dense. Donghua and Ping said, "Brothers, this method is feasible." The method had been verified, so there was no need to harbor further doubts. There was a faint sense of excitement burning in their hearts now. Had the human race finally gained the means to support a crusade? If they could perfectly end the war on the Black Ink battlefield one day, then those trapped here for so long would finally have hope of going home. Liang Yulong nodded. "This matter is extremely important, so we shouldn't reveal anything for the time being. We should limit this knowledge to the people present here." Needless to say, everybody understood what he meant. It was impossible to hide the existence of this ship. All the people who sought help would eventually need to enter the large ship in order to dispel and purify the Black Ink strength in their bodies. Therefore, what Liang Yulong had been referring to was the matter regarding the future crusade. The human race was not ready for such an enormous campaign yet. What's more, the old ancestors had yet to make a decision regarding this matter. If news about the crusade were to spread, it would only give the people hope and expectations. However, their hope and expectations would turn into disappointment if their plans failed to materialize. Yang Kai and the others naturally accepted the order. Zhong Liang patted Yang Kai's shoulder with a chuckle. "You've worked hard recently, martial nephew." Yang Kai truly was a treasure. How many losses had been prevented since he arrived at Blue Sky Pass? If nothing else, He had rescued all those who were corrupted by black ink strength recently. Otherwise, those people would either have been forced to sacrifice a part of their small universe and suffer a decline in their strength, or have been converted into black ink disciples and defected to the black ink clan. However, such incidents no longer occurred after Yang Kai came to Blue Sky Pass. Not a single black ink disciple had been converted by the black ink clan. The more Zhong Liang looked at Yang Kai, the more he approved of this boy. It was fortunate that Feng Ying had encountered Yang Kai back in the black ink clan hinterland and brought him to the Great Pass. Blue Sky Pass would not have been blessed with such great fortune otherwise. It is this junior's responsibility, Yang Kai replied humbly. Old ancestor? Ding Yao's expression suddenly changed, and he glanced in a certain direction. Startled by his words, everybody else turned to look in that direction only to see that there was nothing there. The old ancestor was nowhere to be seen. While they were caught up in their confusion, though, a surging force suddenly erupted from Ding Yao's body. The force immediately sent Yang Kai and the others flying backwards. Since they never expected to be attacked here, they were completely caught off guard and could not react in time. Hence, all of them were sent drifting in all directions like fallen leaves in the middle of a storm. Suspended in midair, Yang Kai heard Zhong Liang shouting furiously, Ding Yao, what are you doing? His heart sank abruptly, wondering why Ding Yao had committed such an outrageous act. Could it be that Ding Yao was a black ink disciple? Now that the purifying light has been revealed, is he planning to kill me? But something doesn't add up. His actions might have been forceful, but there was no intention to harm. At the very least, I didn't sense any danger. I've only been sent flying by the impact. After he finally managed to stabilize his body, Yang Kai looked over and felt his face twitching at the sight. In the sky above the central square, Ding Yao was standing alone on the deck of the new ship. Moreover, the warship had been turned around and was currently facing the eastern defense lines. Looking at the situation, it would seem that Ding Yao had taken control of the ship and was trying to fly it towards the east. It was just that his path forward had been blocked, so he was forced to stop. Combined with Ding Yao's position as the Eastern Army's army commander, Yang Kai had a vague idea about the current situation. At this moment, Liang Yulong, Zhong Liang, and Shen Tuimo were standing in front of the large ship and blocking the path forward. Like Yang Kai, these three had been caught off guard and sent flying backward by the impact just now. It was just that they were 8th Order masters, so not only was their foundation strong, but their reflexes were also quick. The sudden attack only stunned them for a moment before they immediately adapted. Ding Yao, your actions are dishonorable. Liang Yulong's expression darkened. Shen Tuimo frowned. What are you doing? Zhong Liang was polite and roared furiously. Do you even need to ask? As soon as this hooligan made his move, I already knew what he had in mind. This old fart is planning to steal the ship. Ding Yao did not deny his actions. His intentions had been seen through anyway, so he cheerfully said, from now on, this ship will belong to the Eastern Army. On what basis? Liang Yulong yelled inquiringly. Ding Yao looked down condescendingly from above, based on the fact that I'm standing on it while the three of you aren't. Shen Tuimo chuckled. What does that prove? That only happened because you made a sudden move, and we were caught unprepared. If it really came down to it, this ship should belong to the Northern Army. Take a look at the emblem on the ship. Don't you see that the emblem belongs to the Thunder Battalion of the Northern Army's left-wing 3rd Division? Disembark, Ding Yao. I'm bringing this ship back to the Northern Army. The ship was something Donghua and Ping had taken out of the storehouse. It had originally been severely damaged and was barely usable after he made some repairs to the ship. Upon a closer look, though, it turned out that the ship once belonged to the Thunder Battalion of the Northern Army's right-wing 3rd Division. Ding Yao sneered coldly and responded with 3 words, in your dreams. Zhong Liang persuaded earnestly, Ding Yao, why don't you come down first? Let's talk things out peacefully. Ding Yao snorted, I'm not coming down. You will definitely board the ship as soon as I come down. Zhong Liang was speechless. Senior brother, you're not a child anymore. Why are you acting like a little brat fighting over a toy? What would others think if they learned about this? Nevertheless, He could understand Ding Yao's motives in snatching the ship. Bringing this warship back to the battlefield might not directly increase the army's combat ability, but it would greatly cut down on the travel time needed to purify black ink strength. Furthermore, the existence of the ship itself would be a tremendous stabilizing force. The morale of the army would be greatly improved as a result. It wasn't just Ding Yao who wanted the large ship, he wanted it too. We all belong to Blue Sky Pass. Although we are the army commanders of our respective armies, we cannot only think about ourselves. Ding Yao, if you take this ship away today, what will happen to the Southern Army, the Western Army, and the Northern Army? Zhong Liang asked gravely. Ding Yao snorted and motioned to the side. Isn't Yang Boy here? You can just go to him. The Eastern Army is having a difficult time on the battlefield. The presence of this ship might be able to change the war situation. Don't exaggerate, Liang Yulong clicked his tongue. The Eastern Army is having a hard time on the battlefield, but so is the Southern Army. Why are you only focusing on the Eastern Army and ignoring the lives of the disciples in the 3 other armies? Ding Yao, you are an army commander. How can you be so selfish? Marshall Peak, Chapter 4963, Limit. Ding Yao curled his lips into a sneer. Don't try to push such nonsense onto me. There are great Battle Heaven disciples serving under your armies. How can I possibly disregard their lives? It's just that there is only one ship right now, so the Eastern Army will use it first. If you are truly selfless, then you shouldn't stop me. Liang Yulong's expression was dark, but he said nothing in response. Instead, he shot a look at Zhong Liang and Shin Tumo. They could not allow Ding Yao to take the ship away today. If the news were to spread that only the Eastern Army had a ship while the Southern Army, the Western Army, and the Northern Army did not, wouldn't their subordinates criticize them for being useless? Shin Tumo frowned and said, Ding Yao, this warship will not be the only one. Now that we have a prototype, we are bound to have a second, third, and so on. Why are you being so anxious? There will come a day when every one of us has a ship. Nevertheless, Ding Yao remained stubborn in the face of their persuasion. He retorted, since you're not anxious, then stop wasting my time. The army is still fighting outside, and the disciples are struggling desperately. This old master is not in the mood to waste my energy on you. Make way. The 3 of them naturally refused to move aside. On the other side, Dongguo and Ping sighed as he muttered, highly improper. At this moment, the army commanders were squabbling over the ownership of a ship. Their actions were extremely detrimental to their dignity. It was fortunate that no disciples had seen their squabbling. Otherwise, they would quickly become laughingstocks. This ship was created by Yang Boy. Why don't we ask him for his opinion? The army he chooses will have the rights to use the large ship. What do you think? Zhong Liang suggested. While speaking, he secretly gave Yang Kai a wink. Among the 4 army commanders present, he was the closest to Yang Kai. He was certain that he held a great advantage if he asked Yang Kai to step forward. The other 3 could not object to this suggestion. Yang Kai's ability had been proven in the recent period, and many of the disciples serving under their respective armies had received help from him. More importantly, they would still need to rely on his ability to solve the problem of the black ink strength in the future. Rejecting this suggestion would simply cause problems for themselves. Therefore, Yang Kai had a great say in this matter even though he was only in the 6th order. Seeing the gazes of the 4 men turning towards him, Yang Kai felt speechless. He had seen the wink Zhong Liang gave him, but how could he be partial at a time like this? Besides, he could not be biased in this matter. After pondering in silence for some time, he cupped his fist and said, Seniors, although this ship can be used, I'm afraid it will not last for long if you bring it out to the battlefield. Ding Yao frowned. What do you mean by that? Yang Kai explained. The purifying light is the foundation that dispels and purifies black ink strength. Although a large amount of purifying light has been sealed in the cabin, according to this junior's estimate, it is only enough for 100 people at most. In other words, the purifying light will be exhausted after 100 people come and go. After that, this large ship will be nothing more than a decoration. The army commanders exchanged a glance with each other. Meanwhile, Ding Yao blinked his eyes. He suddenly realized that he had been overly eager after seeing the effects of the purifying light ship with his own eyes. Although he had heard rumors about the purifying light recently, he did not actually know much about the specifics of the situation. He originally thought that he could kick back and relax once he obtained the large ship. It was not until he heard Yang Kai's explanation that he learned that the purifying light would be consumed with each use. If it could only be used for 100 people, then what was the point? Can't more purifying light be sealed inside? Ding Yao asked. Of course, that is possible, Yang Kai nodded. But this junior has yet to run thorough experiments on how much purifying light can be sealed in this ship. That is why I have to ask you to leave the ship here, seniors. This ship has only just been completed, after all, so nobody knows if there are any hidden faults with it. If you leave the ship here for further observation, this junior will be able to check on and resolve its flaws more easily. Since a single bowl of water could not be split evenly, there was no need to split it at all. The large ship would remain here, and nobody could take it away. His words were not meant as a polite refusal either. Rather, checking the ship was really something that needed to be done. Yang Kai could not guarantee that the ship could withstand the test of time or the rigors of battle. That was something he would need to observe carefully to be certain of. By determining these flaws earlier, he would have an easier time working on them in the future. Ding Yao and the others looked at each other. Yang Kai had already spoken, so how could they not know that nobody was allowed to set their sights on the ship today? Ding Yao came down from the ship following a period of silence. Meanwhile, Zhong Liang turned to look at Yang Kai and asked, "Approximately how long will it take for you to perform the necessary inspections and verifications?" "It will definitely take a few months. After all, many issues will not come to light if the time is too short." Zhong Liang nodded lightly and said, "Once you verify that nothing is wrong with the ship, we will proceed with mass-producing them. At the very least, we will need 4 so that each army will receive 1. He turned to look at Dongguo and Ping. "Many thanks, Brother Dongguo." Dongguo and Ping nodded. "Please rest assured, Brother Zhong. Artifact refining is the duty of Divine Cauldron Cave Heaven. I will live up to your trust." Then, it's settled. While speaking, Zhong Liang glanced at the other 3 army commanders. Naturally, nobody had any objections. Now that the discussion was over, there was nothing that required their attention anymore. In any case, they needed to preside over the battle faced by their respective armies at the moment and could not stay for much longer. After reminding the others not to reveal the matter regarding the crusade, they hurriedly left the scene. Likewise, Dongguo and Ping, Fansun, and the others also departed soon afterwards to work on a new warship. The ship in the central square had been dragged out of the storehouse, so it was severely damaged and only just managed to meet the requirements after some patching by Dongguo and Ping. If they planned to refine a similar artifact for each of the armies, then they would need to refine brand new warships designed specifically for this role. More than anything, they would need to focus on defense. This new class of warship could probably do without any offensive abilities, but its defensive abilities would need to be top-notch. Otherwise, the losses would be massive if such a warship was damaged or destroyed in battle. It didn't take long before only Yang Kai and Feng Ying remained in the central square. "If anybody comes here for help in dispelling black ink strength, just let them in directly," Yang Kai instructed before he stepped onto the space array and teleported into the cabin. It was just as he had explained to the army commanders earlier. The large ship was newly completed, so there were many things that needed to be tested and verified. At the very least, Yang Kai needed to know the limits of how much purifying light could be sealed within the cabin. It was easy enough to verify this fact, though, as he simply needed to cast purifying light without stopping until the grand array was saturated. Inside the cabin, yellow and blue lights bloomed continuously from Yang Kai's hands and immediately transformed into a pure white light. At the same time, he silently calculated the consumption rate of the yellow and blue crystals while paying close attention to the changes in the spirit array. He was testing the limits of the grand array's sealing effect, a little bit at a time. A huge amount of the yellow and blue crystals had been consumed, and it was not until half a day later that he finally stopped his actions. Yang Kai could vaguely sense that the grand array in the cabin was about to reach its limits. In other words, it could not accommodate any more purifying light. Looking around, The interior of the cabin was filled with a blanket of white at the moment. The purifying light was so dense that it almost felt solid to the touch. In fact, that was not that far from the truth. Yang Kai calculated the number of yellow and blue crystals consumed and immediately had a grasp on the situation. The purifying light sealed inside the cabin was enough for nearly 2,000 sixth-order cultivators. The outcome of his experiment satisfied him greatly. 2,000 was quite a big number after all. Based on the information he received from Fengying during the previous wars between the human race and the Black Ink clan, the total number of people who got corrupted by Black Ink strength throughout the war did not exceed this number. The reason why so many people had been corrupted by Black Ink strength recently was that they were relying on Yang Kai's support. They knew that it did not matter even if they were corroded by Black Ink strength, so they fought freely without any scruples. As a result, the number of cultivators corrupted increased dramatically. Thanks to Yang Kai's existence, the cultivators corrupted by Black Ink strength would not suffer from a decrease in combat power as long as they returned in time for treatment. It was unlike before when they would have to sacrifice a part of their small universe in order to escape danger. If a single ship could be used for 2,000 people, and each army would have its own ship, that meant there was enough purifying light for 8,000 people at full capacity. That would be enough even for extended use, such as on a long crusade. While he was busy working, Yang Kai would occasionally sense others entering the cabin through the space array. These people had undoubtedly come to him for help, but now that they had the ship, there was no need for him to personally cast purifying light on each person. They only needed to teleport into the cabin, wait for a while, and teleport out of the cabin again for all their worries to be removed. That had saved Yang Kai a lot of time and energy. After confirming the limits of how much purifying light could be sealed in the Grand Array, Yang Kai returned to the deck. Fengying had been paying close attention to the space array, so she quickly came to greet him as soon as he appeared. Were there any problems? Yang Kai asked. Although he had verified that the purifying light would not escape from the Grand Array, the concentration of the purifying light had not been very high at the time. The current situation was no longer the same as before. The purifying light sealed inside the cabin was extremely dense, so nobody could guarantee that no losses would occur during entry and exit. There were no problems. Fengying shook her head. Yang Kai immediately felt relieved. It would seem that the ship which integrated both the artifact refining and the spirit array DAOS could perfectly meet the requirements of his original plan. In that case, he could continue with the next step. After pondering for some time, Yang Kai asked, "Martial Ant, does the inner sanctum contain a universe temple?" Fengying was slightly taken aback by his words before replying, "I've heard that they exist." "You've heard?" Yang Kai raised his brow in surprise. She nodded. "That's right. It's because I've never seen them myself. It is said that each pass possessed a universe temple when they were first constructed. As you know, a universe temple makes traveling around very convenient. Even when our people were scattered across great distances, they only needed to activate the universe transference law to return to the universe temple. That was why each great pass had its own universe temples in the beginning. Unfortunately, the Black Ink battlefield is different from the 3,000 worlds. The situation here is rather special, and the existence of the universe temples may give the Black Ink clan a strategic advantage over us. Hence, the universe temples of each great pass were sealed after several incidents. Yang Kai immediately understood after listening to her explanation. If Black Ink disciples were to suddenly appear inside the universe temple, they would surely cause devastating damage to the inner sanctum. That's right. Aside from the old ancestor, who can guarantee that they will not be corrupted by Black Ink strength? What if they became corrupted by Black Ink strength and were converted into Black Ink disciples? They would not be able to disobey the orders of the Black Ink clan. If they teleported back here, forget how much destruction they could cause to us. Even if they merely self-destructed, they could spread Black Ink strength around and incite panic. That is why, even if there was a universe temple in the inner sanctum, it would have been sealed a long time ago. No one would be allowed to use it. He nodded. That's true. Why did you suddenly ask about the universe temple? She looked at him curiously. Yang Kai smiled and pointed at the cabin. Martial Ant, what effect do you think will occur if we arrange a universe array inside this ship's cabin? Feng Ying was initially stunned by his words, but her expression immediately changed in the next moment. While she was deep in thought, various ideas flashed through her mind as she murmured to herself. The reason the universe temples were sealed was to prevent black ink disciples from infiltrating and causing havoc. But if we added a universe array to the ship's cabin, then we wouldn't need to worry about such occurrences. Even if a black ink disciple teleports into this place, the black ink strength in their bodies will instantly be dispelled and purified to restore their true nature. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4964, Personal Matter. With the purifying light, all the previous issues that troubled them were no longer a problem. Feng Ying's eyes lit up. Your idea might just work. But, after saying that, she furrowed her brow. I don't think anyone here can arrange a universe array. At the very least, there are no such talents in Blue Sky Pass. The universe temples in the various Great Passes were as ancient as the Great Passes themselves. There might have been people who could prepare a universe array and construct a universe temple in ancient times. Unfortunately, with the closure of the universe temples, the means and the knowledge disappeared with the passing of time. That was intentionally done by the human race in order to prevent the relevant personnel from becoming corrupted by black ink strength and the Black Ink Clan from obtaining the creation method of the universe temples. The Black Ink Clan was hard to deal with in the first place. If they were allowed to master the mysteries of the universe temples, then they would truly be invincible. I can do it, Yang Kai quickly said. Feng Ying was astonished. You can arrange a universe array? Aren't you? Yang Kai laughed. It's true that I'm completely clueless about the Tao of Spirit arrays, but space arrays and the universe arrays are related to the Tao of space after all. That's why I dabbled in them slightly. Back in the 3000 worlds, he had spent over 30 years comprehending the mysteries of the universe array. His attainments in the Tao of space soared as a result, and he ultimately comprehended his cow punch secret technique from his efforts. Afterwards, Yang Kai also constructed some universe temples in the new Great Territory adjacent to High Heaven Territory so that his disciples could conveniently travel back and forth to investigate the new Great Territory. That was why preparing a universe array was not a difficult task to him. Do you need me to do anything? Should I gather some helpers? Feng Ying asked. Yang Kai shook his head. I don't need any assistance, though I am lacking a few resources. I will need you to help me gather these materials, Marshal Ant. Good. She quickly nodded in agreement. A short while later, Yang Kai handed a list of resources to Feng Ying and asked her to procure them for him. This was not a difficult task for her. Blue Sky Pass had its own storehouse, which contained large amounts of cultivation resources and other materials. Most of the items that Yang Kai needed could be found there. Nevertheless, she would need to inform Zhong Liang and the others regarding this matter and obtain their permission to proceed before she could enter the storehouse to retrieve the corresponding resources. Upon learning that Yang Kai was not only capable of preparing a universe array, but was also planning to set one up inside the cabin of the purification ship, Zhong Liang could be said to be both surprised and delighted. Only less than half a year had passed since Yang Kai first arrived at Blue Sky Pass, but he had brought about numerous miracles in that short time. The biggest surprise was his means to dispel and purify black ink strength. Other than that, he also worked with Dongguan Ping and the others to create a warship that was suitable for a large-scale expedition. In addition, he was planning to prepare the universe array in said warship. As an 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Master, it was only natural that Zhong Liang could see the endless prospects for this method. If they could feasibly carry out this plan, then the humans scattered around would have a much easier time returning to Blue Sky Pass in the future. They would only need to activate the universe transference law within a suitable range to return to the ship immediately. Furthermore, the ship contained purifying light, so there was no need to worry about a black ink disciple infiltrating their ranks. It could even be said that the addition of a universe array to the ship made it more suitable for crusading. Needless to say, Zhong Liang was in full support of the idea. He also gave Feng Ying nearly unlimited authority, so that she was free to choose from the resources stored within the storehouse. In short, he was willing to cooperate with Yang Kai completely. Half a day later, Feng Ying returned with all the materials that Yang Kai needed. With the required resources in hand, Yang Kai plunged right into work inside the cabin. Arranging a universe array was undoubtedly much harder than setting up a simple space array. Although the nature of both spirit arrays was essentially the same, the universe array was ultimately more profound compared to a space array. Not to mention, the layout of the universe array was subjected to certain restrictions due to the limited space within the cabin. The universe temples that Yang Kai previously constructed in the new Great Territory were not small in size. Now that he had to operate the universe array in a limited space, it became necessary for him to make some minor changes to its array chart. Yang Kai was busy for 2 whole months. During this period, he made several major changes through repeated trial and error before he finally completed his task. It was fortunate that the ship already contained large amounts of the purifying light, so when those corroded by black ink strength came over, he had no need to treat them personally. Otherwise, his task would have taken even more time to complete. Afterwards, Feng Ying personally tested and confirmed that the universe array was functional. Zhong Liang couldn't help being overjoyed when he received the report on this matter. Following a delay of 2 months, Donghua and Ping also delivered the first newly constructed warship. Under normal circumstances, it would have taken at least half a year for Blue Sky Pass to construct a brand new warship. That was not something that could be refined carelessly after all. The construction of a warship not only required a large amount of manpower, but also an extremely skilled artifact refiner to oversee the process. It was just that Donghua and Ping knew the importance of this project. The war was raging fiercely, and the sooner they completed this project, the bigger the role the warship could play for the human race. For that reason, he had mobilized the elite disciples of Divine Cauldron Cave Heaven from various places and assembled a workforce of over 100 people. That was how they constructed a brand new warship in the short span of 2 months. The warship was brought to the central square, and Yang Kai immediately entered the cabin. He did not begin filling it with purifying light immediately and chose to arrange the universe array first. It was not until he finished preparing the universe array that he sealed a massive amount of purifying light inside its hull. Another month later, this new warship was ready for the defense lines of the Eastern Army. In the end, Zhongliang and the others ultimately agreed to give the first warship to Ding Yao. It was not because they could not compete with him for it, but because the battle on the Eastern Army's side was indeed the most intense. The other 3 army commanders couldn't be bothered to squabble over such trivial matters either. Since Ding Yao came forward in person to make the request, it was only right for them to show him some respect. Naturally, the most important reason was that each army would soon obtain a new warship of their own, so there was no need for them to quarrel among themselves. For both Yang Kai and Dongguan Ping, constructing these new warships was equivalent to traversing a familiar path. Hence, they could take advantage of parallel production to speed up the process. Half a year passed by in the blink of an eye, and all 3 other armies gained their own Purifying Black Ink battleship. Purifying Black Ink battleship was the class designation Donghua and Ping had given this special warship. The name soon spread far and wide, receiving the recognition of the public. The 4 Purifying Black Ink battleships were stationed at the rear of the 4 armies. Anyone corroded by black ink strength could be rescued immediately, so it was much more convenient compared to the past. Thanks to these 4 Purifying Black Ink battleships, the battle between the human race and the Black Ink clan became even more intense. Meanwhile, in the central square, Yang Kai suddenly had nothing to do. It used to be very lively here. At least a dozen infected people used to come to ask for help every single day. However, ever since the 4 Purifying Black Ink battleships were introduced, nobody came to visit this place anymore. Even if they were corrupted by black ink strength, there was no need for them to come here or for Yang Kai to take action in person either. Each of the Purifying Black Ink battleships contained enough purifying light for 2,000 people to use. Therefore, there was enough to last for a long time. After spending so much time and energy, Yang Kai finally reached his goal. It was time for him to focus on his own affairs now. On the deck of the original Purifying Black Ink battleship, Feng Ying was cultivating with her eyes closed when a figure appeared in a flash before her. Yang Kai had teleported out of the cabin. She opened her eyes to look at him. Although nobody came looking for help during this period, Yang Kai had remained extremely busy. She did not know what he had been working on. She had asked once, but he had not replied to her question. Thus, she did not ask further questions. At this moment, Yang Kai took the initiative to speak. Martial Ant, I've made some adjustments to the universe array. I don't know what kind of effect there will be, so I'm going to test it out. Good. She nodded lightly without doubting him. When he was testing the effects of the universe array, he had also personally taken on the task. His reasoning was that it would be easier for him to discover any issues if he performed the test himself. It would indeed be somewhat inconvenient to leave such tasks to other people. Therefore, Fengming had no reason to feel suspicious about how he planned to test the universe array himself. Martial Ant, please wait for a moment. After saying as such, he turned and left. Since Yang Kai planned to test the effects of the universe array, it stood to reason that he could not experiment from nearby. He had to go much further for the experiment to be effective. Once he was out of Fengying's sight, Yang Kai spun around and rushed towards one of Blue Sky Pass main gates. During this period, he had investigated quite a lot about the situation at Blue Sky Pass. Hence, he was not unfamiliar with the route. Not long after he left, Yang Kai saw many people up ahead of him. It was very lively here with a warship moored in a small docking area, and cultivators dressed in the uniforms of the divine Cauldron Heaven working on it. A series of clanging sounds came from within the large ship, occasionally accompanied by flashing lights. The warship had clearly been in battle as its hull had been damaged. There were several other similar warships in the docking bay, and several hundred people were scattered around the area. They sat down cross-legged in small groups, each silently circulating their secret arts to recover their strength. Yang Kai observed the scene before him, vaguely guessing that these people were those who had just withdrawn from the battlefield. During this period, he had gleaned a lot of information from Fengying and gained a rough understanding of the situation in Blue Sky Pass. Although he had not experienced the fighting for himself, he had no trouble understanding the situation when he saw it. His sudden arrival did not attract much attention. To these people, time to rest was extremely precious and should not be wasted frivolously. Besides, there were many people coming and going from this area, which provided a great cover for him. Looking around, Yang Kai discovered that the main gate was shrouded by a barrier and guarded by several elites. They would not release the barrier easily without an explicit order. The sight made him frown slightly. He originally planned to sneak out of the Great Pass, but it would seem that his plans were not feasible. There was no way for him to leave as long as the barriers around Blue Sky Pass remained sealed. Turning his head to look around him, Yang Kai decided to wait and see what happened. He found a corner and sat down cross-legged, pretending to be adjusting his breathing. Truthfully, he was feeling extremely anxious inside. This was a rare opportunity, and if he failed, he would never be able to leave Blue Sky Pass again. Luckily, fortune seemed to be on his side. After waiting for less than an incense stick worth of time, the Divine Cauldron Cave Heaven disciples in charge of repairing a certain warship had apparently completed their repairs. A Seventh Order Master immediately leapt onto the ship and activated it to check its condition. Once he confirmed that there were no problems with the ship, he yelled loudly, "Mountain Battalion, get on board." As soon as the words left his mouth, 100 people stood up in a flurry and flew towards the ship. Yang Kai quickly grasped the opportunity at hand. He hurriedly stood up and followed the large batch of people onto the ship. The Seventh Order Master swept his gaze over the people on the ship and nodded lightly. Then, he turned to look in a certain direction, cupped his fist, and shouted in a clear voice, "Western Army Right Wing 4th Division Mountain Battalion is prepared to sortie. We request permission to depart for battle." Marshall Peak, Chapter 4965. Why are you here? A guard glanced over from the top of the inner wall, and Yang Kai quickly hid behind the crowd to conceal himself. This couldn't be helped. The person he saw was one of the 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Division commanders who arrived at the conference hall when Zhong Liang convened all the higher-ups. Although Yang Kai didn't know his name, if he encountered this master, he would undoubtedly be identified. He would never want to be caught sneaking out. With a solemn expression, the 8th Order Division commander said, "Launch." The shield opened at his command, allowing the warship to slowly set sail. The moment they sailed out of Blue Sky Pass, the atmosphere turned chilly immediately. Yang Kai, who was standing on the deck, peered upward and noticed a massive void. Numerous warships scurried back and forth, and occasionally, a profound light erupted from their weapon ports, blasting towards the Black Ink Clan's army. There were 7th Order and 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters, who had profound cultivations out on the battlefield battling against the Black Ink Clan. Black ink clouds of all sizes were dispersed around the battlefield, forming something akin to an ocean of murky darkness. The battlefield was also littered with shattered spirit provinces. The black ink clouds were composed of black ink strength that escaped and condensed after the death of a black ink clansman. And undoubtedly, the shattered spirit provinces were pieces of small universes that had been left behind after the death of high-rank open heaven masters. Some might even be pieces of small universes that the high-rank masters sacrificed during battle. Explosions and screams of death rang out as fresh blood dyed the void red and black, and every now and then, powerful life auras would disappear. This battlefield was where countless Black Ink clan members and humans were buried. The number of masters from both sides who had passed away here throughout the war was unknown. Yang Kai's blood steadily boiled as he saw the sight in front of him, and a raging fighting spirit began to rise in his chest. He desperately wanted to rush to the Black Ink clan army and fight to the death. But he was also aware of the limitations of his ability on such battlefields, no matter how powerful he may be. The two races were at odds with one another, and this war involved countless lives. Even the 8th Order Division commanders would not survive charging into the enemy's army all alone, not to mention a mere Yang Kai. Additionally, he had his own purpose this time when he snuck out. He wanted to advance to the 7th Order Open Heaven Realm. His cultivation had been stagnant at the peak of the 6th Order for many years now. For the time being, secluded retreat appeared useless. There was now only one option left, and that was to seek an opportunity to break his own shackles during a juncture of life and death. Yang Kai had long intended to do this, and the ongoing war gave him the ideal opportunity. He was aware that it was impossible for those overseeing Blue Sky Pass to let him accomplish this, though. No one would be concerned if he was simply a typical 6th Order Open Heaven Realm Master. The life or death of an average 6th Order Master wasn't of much concern, as there were literally thousands of other 6th Order Masters in the Inner Sanctum. Everyone had been in a brutal battle with the Black Ink Clan, and only those with enough strength and good fortune survived. However, the fact was that Yang Kai's very existence was extremely important to Blue Sky Pass and, by extension, to the whole human race. He wasn't just another 6th Order Master. Yang Kai had brought the purifying light with him and was capable of arranging universe arrays. It was precisely because Zhong Liang realized Yang Kai's importance that he had asked Feng Ying to guard him. Feng Ying was also not an ordinary 7th Order Master. She was one of the strongest among them. There was no doubt that it was a waste of talent now that she could only tightly protect Yang Kai, but it was still an important and essential duty. Zhong Liang even wanted to assign an 8th Order Master to protect Yang Kai, but that was impossible, so a 7th Order Master was the next best choice and Feng Ying was the best option. This alone showed how much importance Zhong Liang attached to Yang Kai. If Yang Kai told him that he wanted to go to the battlefield and look for a chance to break through by risking his life, Zhong Liang would definitely disagree. Not only would he disagree, he would even ask Feng Ying to keep a closer eye on Yang Kai and prevent him from entering the battlefield. If Yang Kai was killed, the cost to the human race would be too high. After all, he was just a 6th Order junior, meaning his strength wasn't particularly high. Countless 6th Order Masters had died on this battlefield as one tiny mistake could spell death. Because of this, Yang Kai kept his desire to join the battle a secret from the beginning, and even Feng Ying, who had been with him for 6 months, failed to notice any such signs. After waiting for so long, Yang Kai finally found a good opportunity. If he succeeded, he would become a 7th Order Master. If not, he would have to cultivate patiently in the future and simply wait for an opportunity to break through to come. However, before leaving, Yang Kai still waited until the 4 purifying Black Ink battleships were delivered, so that even if anything went wrong in the battle, the purifying Black Ink battleships in Blue Sky Pass side could last for a while, enough to support everyone until the end of the current battle at least. If he was still in the 3,000 worlds, Yang Kai might not be this anxious. But this was the Black Ink battlefield. The stronger he was, the higher his chances of survival. The Sixth Order was too weak, while the Seventh Order open heaven realm was barely enough, so he had to give it a try. Yang Kai went without leaving even a space beacon for himself in order to prevent himself from having an escape route, thus increasing the pressure he felt. He did all this only to improve the chances of him making a life-or-death breakthrough. The Western Army Right Wing 4th Division Mountain Battalion was a unit under Zhongliang's command. Each army had a total strength of around 8,000 troops with 15 divisions in total, each of which had 8 or so battalions. The Eastern Army was currently engaged in the fiercest combat, while the Western Army was somewhat better off. The Black Ink Clan Army had attacked frequently in the West, but had been repelled each time. They had left many dead bodies after those battles, but they were evidently unconcerned about them. Yang Kai, who had spent the 2 years residing in the Black Ink Clan's hinterland, knew that the Black Ink Nest served as the Black Ink Clan's foundation. The Black Ink Clan would continue to exist so long as the Black Ink Nests remained standing. Although the Black Ink Clan's casualties were not small, they weren't sufficient to force the enemy to retreat either. The Western Army's defense line was constructed in the void, some 10,000 kilometers from Blue Sky Pass. This was where warships laid out a tightly defended barrier that would never be broken through by the Black Ink Clan. The warship of the Mountain Battalion was only a few thousand kilometers away from its destination and sailed swiftly, so it arrived at the battleground soon after it departed Blue Sky Pass. The Seventh Order Master at the prow of the warship should be the Mountain Battalion's commander, and with his menacing gaze and deep voice, he ordered, "Everyone, follow me to kill the enemy." When that was said, the 100 or so members of Mountain Battalion immediately got busy, each of them performing their own duties. Yang Kai was suddenly caught off guard and didn't know what to do. He was able to board this ship, but he was unaware of Mountain Battalion's distribution of duties. With no other choice, Yang Kai followed a random pair of people to the deck after realizing that everyone else had gone to their respective positions to prepare to repel the enemy. Suddenly, the two ahead of him turned their heads to look at him, and one of them suddenly said in shock, "Senior Brother Yang, why are you here?" It wasn't that no one saw him when he followed everyone on the boat earlier, but rather that those who saw him didn't seem to pay much attention to him. After all, it wasn't odd for people to be transferred around when manpower needed to be replenished. Those who were unfamiliar with Yang Kai automatically viewed him as a newcomer. Who would have thought that at this moment he met someone who knew him? As the words fell, Yang Kai raised his head and became speechless. The man in front of him looked familiar, and although Yang Kai didn't know his name, it was certain that he was someone who he had treated before. Before the advent of the purifying black ink battleships, there were at least hundreds of people treated by Yang Kai personally. Each of these people was grateful to him and made a point of remembering his face, even if Yang Kai didn't remember their names. Yang Kai had been afraid of encountering such a situation, but he also knew that there was no way to avoid it. He had saved so many people after all, and being exposed was basically inevitable. What happened? The battalion commander turned his head towards them and immediately saw an unfamiliar face. He stared at Yang Kai and frowned vigilantly. "Who are you?" The person who knew Yang Kai said, "Sir, this is Senior Brother Yang," while hastily cupping his fist. The battalion commander raised his brow. Despite not having returned to the inner sanctum to meet Yang Kai personally, he had lately heard the name a lot and asked in shock, "That Yang Kai?" The person who replied nodded quickly, "Indeed." The battalion commander was immediately shocked and asked, "Why are you here?" If this was the Yang Kai he had heard of, he should be in inner sanctum at the moment, so how did he get on his ship? He hadn't received orders to replace any lost manpower as the Mountain Battalion was currently at full strength. Furthermore, even if manpower had to be replaced, Yang Kai would never have been deployed to the battlefield. The battalion commander understood the significance of Yang Kai when he learned about his extraordinary methods. It only made sense for such a valuable asset to be well protected. How could Yang Kai be sent to the front lines? It was no small matter that Yang Kai actually appeared on his ship. Yang Kai quickly thought of an excuse, cupped his hand and murmured, "Sir, I was ordered by the army commander to perform a secret mission. Traveling with you is mainly to conceal my involvement." A secret mission? The battalion commander frowned, wondering what secret mission actually required this man to visit the battlefield in person. He had also heard that, in order to ensure this man's safety, Army Commander Zhong had entrusted Feng Ying to remain at his side at all times. However, after screening his surroundings, he could find no sign of Feng Ying. The battalion commander was no fool, so it was obvious to him that there was something wrong with this matter. However, now that his ship had already arrived on the battlefield, and the front line was in urgent need of support, he couldn't just turn back because of some small doubt. Without asking more, the battalion commander nodded lightly and said, "If that's the case, you can do what you need to." "Many thanks, sir." Yang Kai cupped his fist thanking him, turned his head, and spoke a few words to the two men who had first noticed him. When the battalion commander saw this, he tilted his head slightly and ordered another 7th Order Master under his command in a stern voice, "Go back and ask the army commander what is happening here." He sensed that something was off, and since the issue involved Yang Kai, he had to inform Zhongliang and ask for instructions. Naturally, he had no reason to believe Yang Kai was acting maliciously, as this man would never do something to harm the human race after saving so many of them already. "Yes," the 7th Order Master responded and took out a communication artifact. Back in the inner sanctum, Feng Ying stood up and scowled as she scanned the area around the prototype purifying black ink battleship. Yang Kai said that he had made some changes to the universe array and needed to run some tests, but even after waiting here for half an hour, he had yet to return. As a result, she became doubtful and wondered if he had perhaps already returned. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4966. Why did he go to the battlefield? This was not impossible, for even the prototype purifying black ink battleship was equipped with a universe array. If Yang Kai really came back, he would be inside the cabin. With that in mind, Feng Ying teleported in through the space array on the deck. However, all she could see was white in the cabin. The gentle purifying light flowed around her body like warm water, but there was no sign of Yang Kai in this empty space. He obviously had not returned. Feng Ying left the cabin, now more suspicious than ever. She was perplexed when she unexpectedly noticed a stream of light that had abruptly fallen on the deck from a distance. She fixed her eyes upon him and hurriedly bowed, "Marshal Uncle Zhong." The person who came was Zhongliang. "Where is Yang Kai?" Zhongliang questioned nervously with an ashen face. Feng Ying replied, "He said that he made some modifications to the universe array and needed to test it out, so he left." "How long has he been gone?" Zhongliang's expression sank. "Less than an hour." As soon as she said that, Feng Ying understood that something was off. Similar experiments were conducted by Yang Kai in the past, but each time he returned quite quickly. He was experimenting with the universe array after all, so all he needed to do was to distance himself a little from here and perform the universe transference law to return. How was it even possible for him to take this long this time? The inner sanctum had nothing to delay him either. "Damn it, it really is him," Zhongliang exclaimed. He had hurried back from the front line immediately to investigate the matter himself as soon as he received a message from the 4th Division Mountain Battalion, wondering whether there had been a mistake. After all, why would Yang Kai suddenly sneak out? But after he arrived here, he realized that there was no mistake. Yang Kai had indeed snuck out. Upon hearing that, Feng Ying asked, "Marshal Uncle, is something wrong?" Zhongliang ground his teeth in frustration for a moment before sighing in exasperation and muttering, "That brat went out to the battlefield."
What?
Feng Ying was shocked when she heard his words. Why would he go out to the battlefield? "How would I know?" Zhongliang looked over at the main gate, worried. "I hope we're not too late." After receiving the call from the 4th Division Mountain Battalion, Zhongliang rushed to the inner sanctum to investigate the matter while also ordering Mountain Battalion to turn back. Before making sure whether the person was Yang Kai, he preferred to err on the side of caution. However, the battlefield was always in chaos, and Zhongliang was unsure if the Mountain Battalion would be able to carry out his orders. After all, returning from the front lines was not always simple. If they were surrounded by the Black Ink Clan army, they would have to kill their way out. Feng Ying stood there dumbfounded. Yang Kai actually entered the battlefield. What did this brat intend to do? Furthermore, He didn't even let her know beforehand. It was just truly absurd. Since Yang Kai was really with the Mountain Battalion, Zhongliang had no reason to stay here any longer. He had to go and bring Yang Kai back, so he instantly sprang into the air and shot towards the perimeter. Feng Ying followed closely behind. Zhongliang had assigned her to protect Yang Kai at all times, but the latter had deceived her and escaped. She needed to be responsible for this. He didn't bring this up to you previously, did he? As they soared by, Zhongliang abruptly turned his head to inquire. No, Feng Ying shook her head. She was also perplexed by this series of events, but it was clear that Yang Kai had planned this whole thing out. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to lie and claim that he wanted to go test the universe array to get past the gates. Has there been anything unusual about his recent behavior? Zhongliang asked again. Feng Ying responded in shock. Martial uncle, are you suspecting that he has the ability to cleanse and remove black ink strength, and he has a world spring. He has helped thousands over these past few months, and he led the effort to build the purifying black ink battleships, which is of great significance to us. I don't think it's possible to doubt his loyalty. He should not intend any harm by his action towards Blue Sky Pass or the human race. I simply don't understand why he had to quietly leave. You spent months with him. Didn't you notice anything? Suddenly recalling something, Feng Ying scowled. Martial uncle, if I'm not mistaken, he is trying to break through to the Seventh Order. What? When he initially arrived at Blue Sky Pass, he inquired about advancing to the Seventh Order. Later, after treating several Seventh Order masters, he would ask them about their breakthrough experiences. I asked whether he was getting ready for his own breakthrough, and he frankly admitted that he had reached the peak of the Sixth Order and was just looking for an opportunity to reach the Seventh Order. You are also aware that advancing to the Seventh Order is different for everyone. There are some who retreat to cultivate in seclusions, there are some who have accumulated over a long period of time and simply break through naturally, and then there are those who break through in life-or-death crises in battle. Yang Kai said that he tried entering retreat, but failed. He also said only the heavens would know when he would succeed using the accumulation method. Since these two methods are useless to him, I'm afraid that he wants to try using the last one to make a breakthrough. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have to go to the battlefield at a moment like this. When Zhongliang heard the words, his face twitched. That must be it. Judging by his actions, that brat must have had this idea for a long time now. He also understood that Blue Sky Pass placed an extremely high value on his own existence. Therefore, he had to sneak out because he knew that they would never allow him to go to the battlefield. After working hard to build the purifying black ink battleships and leaving enough purifying light to support the 4 armies for this war, though, Yang Kai clearly decided it was his chance to go out and seek battle. As he began to understand this, Zhongliang suddenly thought of something and gasped, "Oh no. What's wrong, Martial Uncle? That brat is probably mentally prepared to not return. Otherwise, there would be no need for him to leave so much purifying light behind. He's made up his mind to succeed or die trying and cut off all responsibilities to ensure he doesn't hesitate." Zhongliang replied with an ashen expression. Feng Ying's heart clenched. If this was the case, then she would surely be punished for failing her duties, because she didn't even notice the signs despite being with Yang Kai for such a long time. Zhongliang abruptly halted their conversation and pulled out a communication artifact. After swiftly exchanging a few messages, he cursed, "That little bastard." Feng Ying turned to look at him. Zhongliang ground his teeth and said, "That brat is too slippery. He must have realized that Mountain Battalion was suspicious of him, so he actually escaped from their warship before it could retreat. Mountain Battalion currently can't locate him either." Ah! Feng Ying's face suddenly paled. Yang Kai was just a 6th Order cultivator, yet he plunged into the battlefield alone. He would definitely be in grave danger if he did not receive support soon. "I'll tan that boy's hide red once I drag him back," Zhongliang angrily roared. Yang Kai knew that he was vital to the human race as a whole, yet he dared to take such a risk. How would he explain to the old ancestor if anything happened to him? The old ancestor was still recovering in retreat, totally unaware of Yang Kai's existence, but this incident would definitely have to be reported to him afterwards. Zhongliang would also be blamed if the key to victory for the entire human race over the Black Ink clan encountered an accident right under his nose. At the very least, he would be stripped of his position as the Western Army's commander. Martial uncle, Yang Kai. He's not weak. Having worked with Yang Kai to fight their way back from the Black Ink clan's domain, Feng Ying knew that Yang Kai's strength was far beyond that of a typical Sixth Order master, and he could even assume his Grand Dragon form, which put him on par with a Seventh Order master. It makes no difference how powerful he is. How could one man stand against the Black Ink clan army? Even Seventh Order and Eighth Order masters perished on the battlefield, not to mention Yang Kai, a junior in the Sixth Order. Zhongliang also knew about Yang Kai's ability to transform into a Grand Dragon, which at the time would give him Seventh Order strength. However, Yang Kai wanted to seize this chance to break through in a life-and-death struggle, so he would certainly not use his Dragon Clan strength, as doing so would become a mental crutch, leaving no possibility for him to use this method to achieve a breakthrough again in the future. In other words, Yang Kai would only use his Sixth Order strength while in battle. Zhongliang was now merely praying that Yang Kai would not approach the Black Ink clan army's core or show off his Purifying Light secret technique. The last time Yang Kai used Purifying Light offensively, he instantly injured a Black Ink territory lord, giving Feng Ying an opportunity to kill him. The Black Ink clan wouldn't think too much of it if it was only used once. But if Purifying Light was used repeatedly, the Black Ink clan would eventually become aware that it was the nemesis of their Black Ink strength. Once they realized that, they would spare no effort to eliminate Yang Kai and would almost certainly succeed. The Black Ink clan would take whatever necessary measures to execute Yang Kai. The both of them had hurried out of Blue Sky Pass while they were conversing, but once they were outside, all they saw was the raging battle between the two races, with thousands of figures flying about everywhere. How were they to locate Yang Kai in this tangled mess? Zhongliang's expression turned dark, and he quickly sent out a message. Meanwhile, aboard the warship belonging to the 4th Division Mountain Battalion on the front lines of the battlefield, the battalion commander frowned. After rushing out to the battlefield to confront the Black Ink clan, Yang Kai used the excuse of performing his secret mission to open the ship's shields and instantly escape. Naturally taken by surprise, Mountain Battalion hastily closed the shield to stop any Black Ink strength on the battlefield from flowing in. The battalion commander also received an order from the 4th Division's commander shortly after, asking him to keep Yang Kai under strict supervision for the time being and immediately return to the inner sanctum. But this message was received too late. Yang Kai had already left and was nowhere to be seen. There was no other option than to report this issue. As a result, the division commander reprimanded him severely, which aggrieved the 7th Order Battalion commander. Full of grievances and nowhere to vent, he could only let it out on the Black Ink clan. The warship shuttled back and forth, beams of light blasting out as they rammed into the Black Ink clan army, killing many as they went. Soon after, a group of 7th Order masters from the battalion leapt out of the ship, activated their secret techniques and artifacts, and cut a swath through the surrounding enemies. This was how the human race and Black Ink clan fought. 7th Order masters were free to enter the battlefield at their own discretion, while those below the 7th Order had to rely on the might of their warships. Both battalions and squads worked in this fashion to attack and defend on the battlefield. Meaning, elsewhere on the battlefield, Yang Kai wielded his Azure Dragon Spear recklessly, slaughtering Black Ink clansmen wherever he went. One reason he was currently invincible against his opponent was due to his own strength, but the more important point was that the strength of those in the Black Ink clan army was really quite diverse, with many Black Ink clansmen simply being too weak for Yang Kai to have any trouble with. This was much unlike the Cave Heavens and Paradises, who only sent 6th Order masters or above to the Black Ink battlefield. In fact, the only reason there were 5th Order human masters present at all is because their cultivation had regressed from the 6th Order after they repeatedly sacrificed parts of their small universes. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4967. Over there, the Black Ink clan was different. Anyone from their army could freely roam the battlefield. There were the territory lords and feudal lords, who were the strongest in the Black Ink clan besides the royal lords. But there were also Black Ink clansmen who were only as strong as First Order Open Heaven Realm cultivators. How could such weaklings be Yang Kai's opponent? Therefore, even though there was a huge disparity in numbers between the two clans, with the Black Ink clan army always being many times larger than the human race army, the latter had not yet been defeated. Each time, the Black Ink clan army would be forced to retreat. With their army diminished, they had to return to their territory to recover, and then made a comeback after dozens or hundreds of years. Thus, the cycle repeated. World force shook wherever Yang Kai's spear passed, and several Black Ink clansmen would die. The death of each Black Ink clansman would cause Black Ink strength to leak out, which would condense on the battlefield, eventually forming Black Ink clouds. Black Ink clouds would not do any harm to the Black Ink clan. In fact, they provided them with a tactical advantage as they served as both a form of protection and deterrent. Before Yang Kai came to Blue Sky Pass, the human masters would normally avoid the Black Ink clouds on the battlefield, both to avoid being ambushed and to avoid being corrupted by the Black Ink strength. This sort of ambush happened quite frequently on the battlefield, as the Black Ink clan would often attack passing humans while sheltering in the Black Ink clouds. However, after the arrival of Yang Kai and his purifying light secret technique became well known, the human masters became unconcerned with the Black Ink clouds. When a Black Ink clansman was injured in the past, he would look for a way to flee into nearby Black Ink clouds in order to survive, as no human would have the audacity to follow him in. But things had changed now. Even if they took cover inside the Black Ink clouds, the human race masters would still pursue and attack, catching many Black Ink clansmen off guard and increasing the number of their losses greatly. The Black Ink clan was also confused by this sudden change and couldn't understand why the humans from Blue Sky Pass had suddenly become so aggressive. As Yang Kai fought, attacking all the enemies he encountered, he saw a group of human masters fighting nearby. These masters were all in the 7th Order, as only such masters could effectively play a role without the protection of a warship. He had arrived here immediately after rushing out of the Mountain Battalion's warship and received little attention from these nearby 7th Order masters, as they were all engaged in battle and could not spare him too much thought at the moment. If one was careless in this place, they could end up dead, so who would not focus all their attention on the enemies in front of them? However, the 7th Order masters in the area soon took notice of Yang Kai. This was unavoidable, though, as it was clear from Yang Kai's aura that he was the only 6th Order. It was not that 6th Order Open Heaven Realm masters would not appear on the battlefield, but in most cases when they did, it indicated that a warship had been destroyed, exposing the 6th Order and 5th Order Open Masters who were sheltering inside it. So, after realizing Yang Kai's cultivation, the 7th Order Masters assumed that he belonged to that scenario and began to move to protect him. However, the 7th Order Masters were a little taken aback when they witnessed the might of Yang Kai's spear thrusts. No ordinary 6th Order Master could possess such strength. There were a total of 4 7th Order Masters close to Yang Kai. The leader of this small group seemed to be an elderly man, as his cultivation was clearly the strongest of the 4. As for the other 3 masters, they were a lanky middle-aged man, a young man who appeared to be around Yang Kai's age, and a beautiful woman. A warship followed closely behind this group of 4, assisting them from the rear. These 4 masters and the warship which was accompanying them must have belonged to a certain battalion. Yang Kai, who was already familiar with the distribution of forces in Blue Sky Pass, quickly determined this. This spot was also where the fighting was the most intense on the front lines of the battlefield. "Little brother, which battalion are you from? Why did you come here?" The lanky middle-aged man slashed out a shocking sword wave, dispersing the Black Ink clan army in front of him and giving him a moment to ask Yang Kai amidst the chaos. 4th Division Mountain Battalion. He simply said. Technically, he wasn't lying, as he indeed came out of Blue Sky Pass with the 4th Division Mountain Battalion. The middle-aged man sighed, subconsciously believing that the 4th Division Mountain Battalion's warship had been destroyed. Due to this, the boy in front of him was forced onto the battlefield alone. So he said, "Get back on board. You're not qualified to be out here." Coincidentally, their battalion's warship was coming up on them. Although Yang Kai did not belong to their battalion, they were all fighting for the same cause. Therefore, taking him aboard their ship was not an issue. Yang Kai turned to look at this man, raised his spear, and began condensing a scorching power that filled the surrounding void. The cry of the golden crow rang out as a great sun appeared. The surrounding void was suddenly illuminated as this great sun rose. The golden crow cried out ecstatically as it circled around the great sun. The great sun perched itself atop the long spear, and Yong-kai thrust it out into a nearby mass of Black Ink clansmen. A massive halo suddenly erupted within the Black Ink clan army and ignited a region 1,000 kilometers in radius. The blazing force of the light blanketed the landscape. The space itself began warping under the force. A great number of Black Ink clansmen yelled and wailed before disintegrating into ash under the light of the great sun. With a single strike, at least 10,000 Black Ink clansmen were obliterated. The nearby old man's brow rose as he and the young man looked at Yong-kai in great shock, while the beautiful woman exclaimed, "Divine manifestation?" They had witnessed the great sun's brilliance, and they knew that it was no ordinary divine ability or secret technique. It was undoubtedly a divine manifestation. But how could a Sixth Order master have a divine manifestation? How was that possible? The four of them almost thought they had seen wrong. Only Seventh Order masters were capable of using divine manifestations, and not every Seventh Order master had comprehended one. Despite the fact that all four of them were Seventh Order masters, only the old man and the middle-aged man who spoke to Yong-kai just now had their own divine manifestations. The other two had yet to fully comprehend one. The young man and the lovely woman exchanged glances as they both noticed the astonishment in each other's eyes and simultaneously felt somewhat ashamed. Unlike the two of them, this Sixth Order junior could cast a divine manifestation, which was simply unprecedented in their opinion. Although Yong-kai didn't say anything, his message was clear as he cast a quick glance at the middle-aged man who spoke to him earlier on. "Though I'm an order lower than you, I'm not that weak. There's no need for me to fall back." The middle-aged man instantly understood as he grinned, though his brow twitched slightly as he spoke. "Since that's the case, do as you please. Just be careful, kid. On the battlefield, you can only rely on yourself. Don't count on anyone saving you if you find yourself in trouble." With that said, he refocused his attention on his own battle. Although the Great Sun eliminated a large number of enemies, the Black Ink clans soon regrouped. These enemies, surrounded by Black Ink strength, seemed almost inexhaustible. Back near Blue Sky Pass defense line, Zhongliang and Feng strained their eyes as they scanned the battlefield. As the Western Army commander, Zhongliang had issued an order to all the battalions to search for Yong-kai, but due to the chaotic nature of the battlefield, the actual number of people who could seek out Yong-kai was quite limited. As a result, Zhongliang had gotten no useful information up to this point. He only knew that after Yong-kai escaped the 4th Division Mountain Battalion, he flew off into the battlefield alone. Nobody knew his whereabouts now. Suddenly, somewhere out on the battlefield several tens of thousands of kilometers away, a distinctive explosion of light occurred. Zhongliang's expression changed as he immediately looked over. He remembered the first time he saw Yong-kai casting purifying light on the battlefield. The bright and pure white light was a sight never before seen in this war. With the eruption of that white light, the Black Ink territory lord who battled against Zhongliang was badly injured and subsequently killed by Feng Ying. Right now, what caught their eyes was not a pure white light though, but a dazzling orange-red light like a small sundae. Zhongliang felt both relieved and disappointed. He was relieved that it wasn't the purifying light as he was concerned that Yong-kai might reveal it again in the heat of battle. It would be too obvious that it could suppress the Black Ink clan once that happened, and the leaders of the Black Ink clan wouldn't naturally not ignore such a threat, putting Yong-kai into a risky position. However, he was disappointed as it didn't provide any clues about Yong-kai's whereabouts. On the other hand, Feng Ying's eyes lit up as she shouted, "Martial uncle over there." She pointed to where the little sun erupted. That was created by Yong-kai? Zhongliang frowned. Golden Crow cast the sun. That's his divine manifestation. Feng Ying said, nodding. Divine manifestation? He has a divine manifestation? Although it is unbelievable, he does. I saw him use it once as we were making our way back here, Feng Ying confirmed. Due to this event, Feng Ying was able to locate Yang Kai, making it a stroke of luck in this chaotic battlefield. Zhong Liang gaped, unsure what to say. A sixth-order open heaven realm master possessed a divine manifestation? This was something never heard of or seen before. What sort of heaven-defying aptitude did it require for Yang Kai to possess a divine manifestation in the sixth order? But the words came from Feng Ying, so it shouldn't be a mistake. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Zhong Liang raged. Well, you never asked. Everyone was drawn to Yang Kai's purifying light when he arrived at Blue Sky Pass. They knew he had mastered the means of restraining black ink strength and thus had great hopes for this method. Who would have paid attention to Yang Kai's own strengths and aptitude at that point? Forget about if Yang Kai was a heaven-defying talent. Even if he was a mediocre individual, purifying light was all that was necessary to make him critical to the human race and someone who had to be protected at all cost. Adjutant! Zhong Liang abruptly yelled. A seventh-order, open-heaven young woman rushed over, cupped her fist, and shouted, "Sir! What's the situation with the Eastern, Northern, and Southern armies?" Zhong Liang asked anxiously. The woman quickly replied, "The 3 army commanders have responded and agreed to cooperate with the operations here." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.